Third and goal at the 2. Turner gives. Throwing. Touchdown. Rozier.
365 Sports.
The winners are spread out as White's back to throw. Gonna go deep. Got a man open. Touchdown. Oklahoma. Travis Wilson.
65 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important. So is your budget.
Hand off again. Running room. Look out. Could go. One man to beat. He does. Touchdown. Oklahoma State.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Winky going end zone. Caught. Touchdown, Marvin Minnis.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
He throws for Glenn, and he's picked up. Charles Woodman.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Smoak.
All right, here we go on a new week as we roll to the month of March. Sweet 16 is set in college basketball, some coaching hires, and much, much more. And an SID, media relations at UConn, who being a little water for a little bit of overkill, so to speak. We'll get to that a little bit later on. Craig Smoak to my right. I'm David Smoak. We're in the studio. Paul Catalina is to my left. Garrett Ross, Emery Winter, and Andrew Valade today running our mothership. We're going to get to some stats and data, analytics, et cetera, on what we've seen now. But one thing that has happened, no doubt about it, is that we are in the Sweet 16. It is called chalk. Not quite every single team that was supposed to advance has advanced, but no question that there is no Cinderella. You could pick a Cinderella out of who's left from those who are the least likely to win or who are the least likely to be here in the Sweet 16. Craig Smoak, there has been very few, one or two maybe buzzer beaters. There's very few Cinderellas. In fact, Cinderella is for this year dead.
Yeah, it's been a very uneventful tournament in regards to upsets and things of that nature. I mean, we've got a little bit of that, but not nearly our annual fill of Cinderella, and so it's been weird in that way, and I think just begs the question of, is that an outlier, or is this just a sign of things to come, having, half the Sweet 16 basically from one conference, having the entire Sweet 16 basically from four. I mean, I swear I've seen a couple of videos lately. There's not contrition in college sports. There's not, like this tightening, and I'm like, are you looking at the actual results that are going on in the field? Are you looking at the playoff field, how many teams in which conferences? Because if you look at football and you now look at basketball, there's a lot of room for Cinderella to dance around the ballroom right now, or at least they're not punching their tickets the way that they typically have. So is that more of just all the things that have happened the last couple of years are now forcing us into a situation where basketball is now going to be laden more often with big brands?
Yep.
Or is this just, again, an outlier year? I don't know. It feels kind of like the first part, unfortunately. I think that the money being poured in, the extra money that you get from your television deals and all of that is certainly helping the S. I mean, there's no doubt about it. A lot of talking before the dance, but walk the walk, especially this past weekend. So is that an uneventful and yet still up to this point?
Garrett, are we able to use? Just 1 second. Okay, all right. I'll go ahead and just kind of walk through this with Craig, and we appreciate your time. If you haven't yet, please hit the like and or subscribe button. Spread the word. 365 Sports afternoons between 3 and 6 Central Time here on 365 Sports and YouTube. So, the SEC, yeah, they took a few beatings early in the tournament. When they had teams go down. When you have 14 teams, you're going to have some teams lose, and most of the lower level of their standings, the teams like Oklahoma, Texas, among others, were the ones that got beat. They got knocked out. But look at them now. They have 7 teams among the Sweet 16. The ACC had 7. I believe it had 7 in 2016. They had like 6 or 7 teams that were actually in the tournament. So you put enough in it, you're going to have some get through. But that was a great win for Ole Miss. Unfortunately for Iowa State. So 7 of the Sweet 16 is from the SEC, and so they did eventually pull through and move into the next level. The Big Ten, remember, they started 10-0. That is not the case now, but they still have a nice chunk. And how about the Big 12 with Houston, Texas Tech, BYU, and late yesterday evening, Arizona into the Sweet 16. There are the logos and graphics of each of those teams. Craig, I think 4 out of 7. You'd like to have had more. Maybe you felt like Iowa State could also slide through. But no, Ole Miss was really good with Chris Beard. But 4 of 7, pretty good for the Big 12.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good for the Big 12. It's also, let's take a look at the SEC and start there with the 7. I mean, that's the crazy part of this whole thing is 7 teams. And I just talked about the talk before the tournament and all of the love that the SEC was getting at the best basketball conference in America. And look, they still need to go crown the national champion, but when you got 7 out of the 16 opportunities, I think there's a pretty safe bet they're probably going to do that, especially with all of the high seeds that they have still standing. But, I mean, to get 7 into the 16 is pretty remarkable, pretty cool for them. A great year, no doubt about it. But, yeah, 4 for the Big 12 I think is something you're still very excited about. That's a quarter of the field. Yeah, you would have loved to have snuck in an Iowa State, but they just got outclassed. Baylor got completely obliterated by Duke. That wasn't
not
even
a surprise.
close.
Yeah.
So, you took a couple on the chin, but I think 4 is really good. I think Arizona had a really nice win at the end of last night that almost slipped away. It almost had 5 Big Ten teams and 3 Big 12 teams, but, they held on. And obviously, there's still some very good teams remaining. Texas Tech, Arizona, BYU with a great win, and they're really playing incredible ball right now, and obviously Houston. So that's a good little field. Big Ten's got 4. And then the ACC with just the 1, and it's Duke who beat the mess out of Baylor. But as I mentioned a few minutes ago, that's 4 conferences in the Sweet 16.
Yeah,
that's
one.
all the Power 4 conferences. That's not the MAC or the, somebody getting somebody in. That's 4 conferences clearly representing, and that's what goes back to my talking point from a few minutes ago, is like, is this the new norm now because of the way the money is flowing? But, yeah, an incredible year by the SEC, and you're still happy if you're Brett Yormark. I mean, you got 4 cracks at the title out of 16, 4 good teams. I think you're feeling great about that.
Well, I spoke with TCU AD Mike Buddy earlier today. We'll have that interview later in the show. He was sitting with Brett Yormark as TCU's women got into the Sweet 16, talking about how they were hoping they could get that one more. Houston and BYU had comfortable leads and kind of controlled their games. They had to hang on, Arizona, but they got through. And so a pretty darn good start. But I miss Cinderella. I got to tell you, that's probably the least I've ever watched the weekend into the round of 32.
I watched quite a bit, and it's disappointing that you don't get that. I mean, every single team up there is some level of bigger brand than Cinderella. I mean, like there's a bunch of champions up there. There's a bunch of people really well. There's people who played in the title game. It's just how it is. I'm not ready to get all frantic about this whole thing is ruined. But when they throw 76 teams in here, it's gonna ruin it. It's gonna make it worse. And this week was kind of an indicator of what 76 would be if you leave it where it is. I think this thing will still be cyclical, but when you have gigantic, huge conferences that are 16, 18, 17 teams, yeah, you're going to see more teams of one conference in there because those are the teams that were going anyway a lot of the time. I mean, Texas was the last team in the SEC, but they were constantly at least making the tournament in the Big 12. So nothing's going to change except the conference patch on their chest. So, that doesn't, does that mean the SEC is great at basketball all of a sudden, or they just pick up some better brands?
They're having a hell of a year.
They're having a great year, yeah.
And they were able to. It could have been 5-9 or whatever got in, but they're having one heck of a year. Well, think about this.
Let's face
the
this,
Big 12 is 10-3, Big 10 12-4, SEC is 15-7. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah. So I mean, think about it this way: they added 2 teams though. They added only 2 teams.
Yeah.
The Big Ten added 4 teams. The ACC added a couple of teams. The Big 12's obviously added a bunch of teams they had to backfill. But, yeah, I mean, there's been some extra teams added. But you're looking at the Pac-12 getting picked apart certainly in this. But, yeah, I think that all plays into it. But I think more of my concern is not so much the way the teams have been hoarded, although that's very evident in these totals. I mean, that's why all of a sudden the last year it's like these are the most that has happened here. This is the most that's ever happened. Well, yeah, because everybody's got these super conferences now, to your point. But I think the money and the way that's flowing is the biggest issue here. Or not issue, but the biggest reason as to why, outside of the obvious of now the Big Ten gets to count Oregon as a tournament team and they get to count UCLA or whoever else. That's definitely contributing, but I do think the SEC only added 2 teams. So why are they suddenly having 14 teams in the tournament? Yeah. It's not because they added Texas and Oklahoma that 12 others are suddenly good enough to be in there as well. It's the commitment of money and the overrun of money that they have, where there's only so much you can spend on football after a while, and you've got so much left over. Where does that go? Well, that's going to basketball right now. Look at the coaching hires. We're going to get into those. Like That's why this is the way that it is as much as anything, I think, is because of the resources. And obviously, yes, the teams have added, but in the SEC's case, you only added 2. Yeah. That doesn't make a huge difference in the 14 that you put in the tournament overall.
They got some great coaches and more to come. By the way, Dusty Lear sent this to us on Twitter. SEC Big Ten had 50% of the final 32, now have 70% of the Sweet 16. They're getting $2 million per unit. That means if you advance, you get, as a conference, $2 million. So if you have 7 teams that advance over the weekend, that's $14 million. And again, you take all of whatever you gain in 1 year, add it up, and then you distribute it over a 6-year period of time. Nice side hustle for these guys to squeeze some more cash. Have a good show today. So everybody that has a team into the Sweet 16 got another $2 million per win over the weekend. So, Dusty, thank you for reaching out to us. Now, Kevin Gall made this comment. He goes, yeah, the SEC has 7 teams. The Big 12, with 4 of their 7, actually had the highest percentage of those who got in the tournament, but the Big 10, SEC, and Big 12 all with 50% of more of what they had to get into the field of 68. OptaStats had this note. First time the Sweet 16 is composed entirely of major conference teams. Craig brought this up earlier. Since the Sweet 16 officially began in 1975, the 4 conferences represented. Others, Sweet 16, had at least 7 conferences into the Sweet 16 in the years past since they began using that term and since it became a thing in the tournament, and that was 50 years ago. That says quite a bit, too.
Yeah, and look, to show you, like, how much Cinderella is struggling, I'm not sure if you guys mentioned this while I was over there fixing our little network issue that we had, but the 10 seed is like the double digits, the saddest double-digit seed ever, and it's bought and paid for. Because it's Arkansas and John Calipari and the amount they're spending on that roster. A 10 seed is actually underachieving for what Arkansas paid for. They didn't pay for a 10 seed roster. Now they paid for a Sweet 16 roster, but as far as and everything that happened until this last weekend was a little underachieving for what Arkansas went out and bought last year.
First year maybe. First year, perhaps a little bit of growing pains. But, yeah, for what they're paying him,
for what they're paying him, they didn't pay him to be a 10 seed. Bottom line.
I mean, yeah, they didn't pay him to be a 10 seed, but they did pay him to be a Sweet 16
guy.
Yeah,
but, he, again, this weekend is when he lived up to that. Until then, he had not yet. Like, the roster was underachieving.
They weren't very good with Musselman's last year, were they?
They weren't. Yeah, and they were up and down all year this year. So getting the Sweet 16, yeah, they've hit their stride. But again, when they did that, I'm sure they were a little bit like, hey, let's speed this up here because that's why
it's a huge win for him against Pitino, his buddy, so to speak.
Buddy?
Yeah.
They don't.
So 2 years ago, by the way, in the Sweet 16, they had 9 different conferences. I mentioned that there's been 9 different conferences were a part of the Sweet 16 just a couple of years ago. That came from Stuart Mandel.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stats being thrown around. I saw John Fanta, this from Fox Sports, 64-team format since 1985. There's never been a Sweet 16 to not have at least one non-major conference team. So basically my entire life, that has never happened, and the closest instance was 2016 and 2017 when 15 major conferences made it, or major conference teams, and Gonzaga was the lone exception in both of those years. So it happened because Gonzaga made it happen, but it almost didn't because they were the only team to do it. But since 1985, there's never been a Sweet 16 to not see at least one non-major conference team, and that's now broken. So that's not the case now. It's ACC, barely. It's Big 12, it's Big 10, it's SEC. That's it. So this is definitely a different tournament. I'll say what I said at the beginning again. I'm not saying this is the way it's going to be, or I'm not predicting that. I have no earthly idea of what the future holds, but it does play well into the storyline of college sports right now and sort of the paranoia and the wonder about what this all looks like with the money going how it's going. This is very interesting timing for it to be the first time since 1985 that's happened, and it's all the major conferences sitting here. So we'll see if that holds in years to come. But that is, I think, the most interesting thing. What has been a very uninteresting tournament, and as we started off talking about at the start of the show, in a lot of ways, I've still been entertained. I've still enjoyed a lot of the games. But, yeah, the mid-major or the major level dominance, even though some of those teams like in Arkansas might be a team that's technically an upset Cinderella-style team because of their seeding. Yeah, there's been a lot of just the higher teams moving on, and that's led to a kind of a quiet, I think, tournament here these first couple weekends.
Christopher Swerzinski, I think, and I hope I said that right. I'm sure I didn't, but if you think about it, he mentioned BYU had been a mid-major.
Right.
Houston was a part of the AAC. Arizona was part of the Pac-12, so that would have been a part of another, but that would have been a different conference. That you're right, that would have gotten into the Sweet 16. So thank you very much for that, and also so far already going at it today with some information to us and back to you inside the chat.
Yeah, there's two reasons as we talked about. I think it's obvious that there's two reasons. If and again, if this next year it's like half the field's mid-majors, then this will be a stupid talking point that lasted for only a year. But if it's like this again next year, then you go, wait a second, is this a pattern starting? And yeah, it's the combination of conferences. I mean, Oregon's representing the Big 10 last night, right? Mm-hmm. Arizona's representing the Big 12. BYU's representing the Big 12. And I know that Arizona, Oregon aren't mid-majors, but yeah, just that movement has consolidated, even though I swear I saw some last week. There's no consolidation. There absolutely is consolidation. Look at the tournament. Yeah. But there's that consolidation, and then the NIL money. I think that undoubtedly plays into the focus of Greg Sankey in particular to get his league in better order as far as basketball goes, and a lot of that was accomplished by many of the hires they made. And now another one that's been made in the last 24 hours that they hope contributes to that even more with Texas. But, yeah, those two combinations, or that combination of those two factors are definitely big reasons as to why I think we're seeing it this year.
We're going to get to some coaching changes in just a second. Real quick, Paul. Nicole Arbach, two non-NIL factors. The conference realignment we just mentioned, BYU, Houston, etc. Veteran, former mid-major players finishing their careers at power conferences.
Yeah, transfer portal needs to be mentioned as well, of course. And I don't know why we went this far without not mentioning it. But, yeah, that's obviously a part of it as well.
But I also don't think, like she says, non-NIL factor, I don't think transfer portal and NIL can be
that's not. Especially in basketball, those guys aren't leaving mid-majors to go to Arizona for nothing.
Yeah, the guy from Maryland made that clear yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Queen.
Did he travel?
Man, I don't like getting into that stuff. I don't think so.
Okay,
on the winning shot.
On
the game-winning shot.
Here's the thing.
No.
Okay, here's the thing. We don't know if he did or didn't. So now traveling is the new targeting.
Because we don't know quite how
we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I wonder if any of that is morphed in from what the NBA is when you see LeBron standing at midcourt and he just starts walking.
I'm sure.
Well, I mean, guys, travel hasn't been called regularly for like 30 years now. I mean, it's the most non-called regular call that you could make, because if you called it actually the way it was, there would never be a game that finishes.
It'd be 27-24.
Yeah, so, I mean, it is open to interpretation. I think it's got to be extra egregious, and even then, I've seen plenty of times in the NBA where it's so bad, I think even the referees are shocked that they don't call it. They're like, they're too stunned to even call it. But, I mean, that's one of those that's like targeting in that way of do you call it in this moment? And it's like, well, you're supposed to. And what's your definition of it and all that? I can see where that comes from.
And look, I think there will be the mid-major teams. I think what you're going to see is like, okay, Creighton, not even, that's a Big East team. But you'll see some teams that their NIL is just dedicated to that. Like Gonzaga is for basketball, where they'll be like, look, this is all our chips in the middle of the table for basketball because they don't have football, or it's just the biggest thing there. But I think that maybe some of the randoms, like the St. Peters of the world, are going to be tougher to see. I
George
think
Mason.
The George Masons, that'll be tougher to see.
Florida Atlantic even last year.
And again, if these SOBs put 76 teams in, it's going to whittle out more of the Cinderellas early on anyway, just because of matchups.
It will, but I want to say something that's kind of controversial here. I understand kind of the wringing of hands over, the lack of Cinderella. That certainly is mostly why we are just a buzz on Mondays after tournament weekend's over, is because there's been a couple of games, if not more, that have had us just going nuts for 24, 48 hours, and the results are just crazy and this and that. But, for the lack of that, are y'all looking at the games we got in store?
Yeah.
You're looking at how big those I don't go by, my fandom doesn't go by TV ratings of like, that wasn't a good game because 3 million people didn't watch it. Like, I'm not into that whole bag of corner of fandom, but there will be monster ratings for a lot of these games because there are massive fan bases involved, and there are fan bases like Kentucky involved, and there are fan bases that are new to it that are involved, that are excited, but they're big fan bases, and they're the Power 4 conferences, so they've got the most money involved, and they've got the biggest schools involved. And so for as much as people are like biting their fingernails over, is this the end of the Cinderella story as we knew it? Is this the way the tournament's going to be from here on out? I guarantee you may not like it, but the TV executives are beaming this morning. They are thrilled with the field that they've got remaining. I think pure basketball folks are thrilled with the matchups they've got in the Sweet 16. So there's going to be some mega games coming up that, it might not be Cinderella the way that we've been accustomed to after the first couple of weekends, but I think you're looking at the next couple of weekends and going, there's going to be some damn good basketball games coming up.
No matter who wins.
Yeah, no matter who wins.
Auburn and Michigan, I'm telling you, they started tightening it up on A&M, and A&M just couldn't handle it. So you got two dudes there. Ole Miss, Michigan State, Tom Izzo, are they on a collision course against Michigan?
Well, that could be Florida. Badass. The fact that they're going to be in the same region, like all those fans from the state are going to be traveling there for those. Like the entire state of Michigan will be in town to possibly see each other play to go to the Final Four. So that's going to be pretty badass. If it gets to that point, it could be Auburn, Ole Miss, and then that's two SEC fan bases colliding. And then if it's any other iteration of it, it's some SEC versus Big Ten matchup. So you're winning out in that quarter of the tournament. Whoever got the host site drew their lucky numbers for the couple of games that they got, because they're going to get big attendance either way.
Florida, Maryland. Maryland had the one buzzer beater. Texas Tech and Arkansas, an old Southwest Conference game, and Calipari against our great friend Grant McCaslin, and they look really solid, man. They took care of their business against a team that could have been dangerous in Drake because of their style. How about two dudes, Kentucky, Tennessee, another SEC, Houston, Purdue, very close. They're playing, I think, in Indianapolis, and they're playing right around the corner from where Purdue is. Duke, Arizona, BYU has been fantastic, and they play Nate Oates in Alabama.
Yeah, by the way, Michigan State was not in a rush to get to the Sweet 16, apparently. Like, both games, they started really, really slow, but they're very, very good. Look, we're getting some remarkable games this week, and you're not wrong. It's just, I think the bigger thing I was more upset about is that we had to wait till the second to last game last night to see our first damn buzzer beater.
Yeah, no, that's
like that was where it was
fair.
like, hey, like a lot of the games you could, and again, if you were either watching, in the multi-view or just watching and following scores, almost every game I watched this weekend, and I probably watched 80% of them, I could pretty much at a point go, all right, well, I can turn over to this one because they'll be able to coast in these last 3 minutes. And I was never wrong. Never once did I have to go back. Iowa State and Ole Miss looked good for a second, but never wants to have to go back.
Yeah, I don't know what you attribute that to. I mean, I think it's pretty clear when you're talking about big schools having big success, and there's advantages as to why that's happening now, especially in a way for the SEC, the number of teams that it's never happened in history before. But, yeah, I mean, just in general, without framing it to be like some big thing that's like this – exterior crisis for college sports like everything else is. Just in general, the lack of buzzer beaters made it for, less entertaining viewing, or made for less entertaining viewing. So I don't know what you attribute that to. Just one of those years, I guess, where the matchups dictated that there wasn't going to be a lot of down to the wire for whatever reason. And, that certainly has been missing up until, nearly the end of the weekend. Yeah, so that's hopefully something that changes here in these next few rounds, and I think it probably will, because I think you're going to have some really big-time schools that are not just going to run away with some of these games. But, you mentioned the matchups. Tech, Arkansas, feels like they played each other in something or another pretty regularly, so I think that'll be spicy. Kentucky, Tennessee, that crowd's going to be otherworldly. That's going to be for a spot in the Elite Eight. That's going to be an insane crowd. Those two schools hate each other. So that's going to be, I think, an amazing atmosphere. All of these will be, but, I think the way it sets up there in the South with the potential Michigan State matchup, or an Auburn-Ole Miss, or just an SEC Big Ten, that's great. And you couldn't have asked for more there. And then I think drawing the Kentucky-Tennessee out in the Midwest for those organizers who just get to host these games, you're dropping to your knees and saying, thank you, Lord, because that's going to, again, be insane. But all these should be incredible atmospheres because you've got, terrific fan bases, big schools involved. So, yeah, I'm excited about the field, even though we haven't been maybe as, crazy through these first couple of weekends as we all would have liked.
Hey, how about this? Coaching changes don't always work, and we're about to tell you some new ones, but we'll get to that in a second. So, this all started when John Calipari leaves Kentucky for Arkansas, right? And then Mark Pope goes to Kentucky from BYU, where he played. And then Kevin Young comes off an NBA staff, all sorts of great, brilliant young credentials, and he goes to BYU. All three of them are in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, it worked out for everybody.
Everybody did, absolutely. That was a note I got from Jeff Borzello. Now,
I wonder what it was like. Was Calipari was just like, it's just showing, like,
I think he's just tired.
Just fatigue.
Yeah, like
of
Self
that
maybe
thing.
In about a year or two,
because
if they have another year like that.
Because it's not like he couldn't go to Kentucky and say, here's the budget I need, and they would have said no.
I think they both were ready to move on.
Yeah, they're clearly, but yeah, it's just weird to me that, like, I thought he had kind of, and maybe he's also got some different coaching styles. I thought his style had become a little bit played. They kind of knew what he was doing. But clearly, look, he beat Kansas in a really gutty, tight game. And then at the end, they pulled away from St. John's. St. John's really had nothing.
4 combined teams of both St. John's and Arkansas were like 4 of 37 shooting threes, or maybe worse than that. Yeah. And the fact that Arkansas won doing that. Some coaching changes.
They're not a good scoring team. That was pretty clearly pounded over your head in the commentary of that game. And then you saw it out in full force where they're just not very good offensively and couldn't muster nearly enough against Arkansas. I think, there's guys that date supermodels, and you're like, why would you ever leave her? Well, because there's another supermodel that he wants to date. He got tired of the other one. Like, you live in that world of, it's just a program to him. It's not like, oh my God, it's Kentucky. Like, ooh, it's like, man, I've won at Memphis. I'll go win at Arkansas, and here he is. He's winning at Arkansas, and that check still cashes, and that house is still huge.
And he's happy as he can be now.
Yeah, so I think you just, you and that one particular supermodel just needed to go your separate ways, but you're both back in the arms of others and feeling great about where you are, and it was best for both parties. It was a mutual breakup that worked out well for both parties. And, BYU with Pope leaving, you don't know what direction that's going to take you, and obviously made a brilliant hire in Young, and he's young, and he's fiery, and he's got a lot of excitement already brewing there, and with their resources and their fan power, that is definitely a program that you feel like is is certainly carrying its weight this year. I mean, with what the football team did, and I'm not even getting into the extracurricular sports, but just football and men's basketball alone, it's been a great year for BYU. But, yeah, Young's got them playing really well, and he's going to have them being a formidable program for the long haul. So, yeah, it's rare that you probably see so many situations work out for everybody, but that's exactly what happened, and you wouldn't have guessed that last year when it was like, oh, they got stuck with this guy, or he's never going to be as good as that guy. Everybody's happy.
All three programs seem to be really happy, in momentum mode, and also have a great future ahead of them. By the way, I haven't given our guest lineup. TCU Director of Athletics Mike Buddy, he was at West Point, now at TCU. He was a baseball pitcher at Wake Forest and also played on a Yankees World Championship team as a pitcher. He has an interview where I was able to record. Emery was able to do that with me this morning. I think he is impressive. We'll do that at 4. Alex Golish, I love his attitude. I love his personality. USF football coach at 4:30 today. Kevin Ioli, boxing historian, on the passing of one of the gentle giants, although when he was younger, man, he wanted to kill people in the ring, and he almost did, in George Foreman. And then also Seth Greenberg from ESPN, college basketball analyst, will join us today as well. All of that between 4 and 6, and Paul's Top 5 will be a part of it too. Here are some coaching changes. Texas found a dude. Sean Miller has been at Arizona, then of course, went to Xavier, and now is the head coach at UT. I saw Michael Luke, along with Jason Shear, they cover Arizona, with the describing about all of what Miller brought to the table when he was in Arizona. He said that he had to kind of learn not to be too, I guess, worried about what other people were saying. He also needed a reset by the time he was done at Arizona. This is from Michael Luke. I also believe he knows the ins and outs of what it takes now to win at a program where the microscope and resources will all be at his disposal. He will have that at Texas. So there's a note from a guy that covered him. Sean Miller has a great record. He went from Arizona. There was that the Adidas thing that was flaring up? Is Arizona a part of that? I mean, Kansas and
DeAndre Ayton getting $500,000 as part of that whole thing, and
But his assistants were given show cause. He was not.
Yes, and yeah, look, this is a really good hire based on it's like. The thing about Texas, like, they can go get mostly who they want, but if you're trying to go pluck a big name from somewhere, everybody, wanted Nate Oates, right? Oh, should have had Nate Oates and shouldn't have let him get to Bama and all that, blah, blah, blah. Well, Bay's got a great situation. Like, you're going to have to really go above and beyond to get Nate Oates for the same probably results you're going to have, if not better, with Sean Miller in the long term. I think this is a great hire for Texas. I think that given the fact that he was giving a guy $500,000 before you were allowed to do it, he's going to know how to do that. And I'm not even knocking that. I'm just saying that that's the case. He went out and got guys like DeAndre Ayton. He can recruit. He's won in 2 different stretches at Xavier. It's a really good fit for them, and it's a really nice way to hit the ground running.
I saw Xavier's one of their best players hit the portal today.
Yeah,
I wonder where he's going to end up, maybe in Austin, Texas with Sean Miller. Who knows?
I saw a tweet from Front Office Sports said in 2017, Rick Pitino, Will Wade, and Sean Miller were being investigated by the FBI. Now they've led their teams to March Madness. One's to the Sweet 16, another's got a promotion, and the scandals, basically the point of the story is they don't even matter. Like, they're not even relevant to these guys' careers at this point, but they were a big damn deal at the time and certainly were flouted to be the biggest of deals. And they went unscathed, basically. I mean, not entirely, obviously, but they're doing fine now. Others went to jail. There's others that got the short end of the stick when it came to that whole FBI investigation. But I think it's a logical choice. I think somebody, when we talked about the likelihood of this happening, I think it was on Friday, it seemed the writing was on the wall after Chip Brown had put out a tweet, I guess, about what the expectations were. And especially after falling to Xavier, the expectations were that Rodney Terry was likely going to be out. So we kind of figured that would be the case. Chris Del Conte has now shown that he always has a card up his sleeve, that he's already got a coach ready, willing, and able. I just wonder, did they know when they played the other night?
Yeah.
They had to have, right? He had to have known he was probably going to be the Texas coach soon.
Well, I mean, we talk about tampering with college players.
Which is fine.
That's fine. But there's no question, you would think. Same thing with Will Wade and NC State.
Yeah, he had to have known, you would think, that when they played the other night. So then for him to beat Texas, he basically won the job, is basically what he did. He knocked out Rodney Terry, got him fired, and now he gets the job after they fall in the second round. So this has clearly been worked on for a while. That's Del Conte's MO. So no surprise there that they were able to move so quickly like they have done with all of their job openings. But I think on paper it's a really good hire, especially when you take into account that they had gotten pretty far down the road, reportedly, when Terry was kept on. I think the optics of letting go Terry back then would have been really bad for Texas. I think just the timing in the world with a black head coach, had you moved on, would have been looked at very poorly, not giving him a long rope to, play out a couple of seasons and see what he can do, rather than just, I inherited Chris Beard's team and I took him this far, and then you give me 1 year and it's not good enough and I'm out, even though that would have been too much. So they gave him, some room to run with, and he made the tournament, but and had obviously a deep run a couple years ago, but it just felt like, the obvious writing was on the wall. So, they moved quickly, no surprise, because you expected it, and there was history here. So, it makes all the sense in the world. So whoever mentioned Sean Mill the other day, you were dead on. I'm sure that was probably the talking point on Texas boards. I just hadn't really delved into those too much. But, I think it's a really solid hire, and they've put together a really impressive coaching staff down there in Austin.
Yeah, I would think. He's, he said last year there was no, he and Jim Schlossnagle in their talks every day had never brought up working together.
Sure.
And then he fires David Pierce and hires Jim Schlossnagle the same day. Okay.
On the day that A&M's playing in the final game to try to win a World Series championship.
How dare you? The guy who's planning secret meetings at graveyards would never have secret phone calls and talk about jobs when jobs aren't open.
No, I saw the list. I think it was Danny Davis said, here's, this guy fired, this guy hired, that he knows what he's doing. He just, his coaching searches are not long, but if you're a Texas coach that's going to be fired, he knows he's going to fire you well before he does it. Before he does it.
Let me tell you something. They have put together with Schaefer in women's basketball, with what they now have in men's basketball. Sark is on top, almost on top of the world in the other particular sports. Schlossnagle, of course, Texas is number 3, just won 2 out of 3 against LSU. They've got themselves, and that's not, there's 25 other sports. They got a good thing going, and you got to give Del Conte credit for almost all of it. Iowa.
And the NIL era.
And then, of course, also being able to have more scholarships than actually you have now with what's going to happen with the House settlement. Iowa, Ben McCollum joined us a couple of weeks ago from Drake. Heck of a run. They ran into a better team, though, in Texas Tech. There were thoughts West Virginia might be able to get him. Been a tough stretch for Ren Baker when they lost their coach, DeVries, to Indiana. And now Ben McCollum is the new coach with the Hawkeyes.
Well, you're welcome, Ben McCollum. I'm sure the exposure that you got on this show last week was what pushed you over the top and got Iowa there. For them to look so far away from their campus for a head coach, they may not have known that a guy in their own state was a 4-time national champion. No,
Did you see the graphic that they showed they had a coach? Did you see what they put up there? Remember we asked him about his button-down and the tie? They put up a picture in a locker, something like that, with a button-down shirt and a tie, and they just kind of had the bulging eyes.
Yeah.
Which he's known for by wearing that.
Yeah. I think this is an awesome hire for them. The guys won a ton. I feel very bad for Drake that they just have to keep doing this seemingly every year. They bring in, they get a coach, guy gets them to the tournament, does well, and then, they go somewhere else. But, great job by Beth Getz getting a guy who's an absolute proven winner and will do great at Iowa.
Minnesota hires Colorado State. My God, they were so close to moving into the Sweet 16 to represent everybody but the power schools. They get their man. Nico Medved is headed to Minnesota, part of the Big Ten. He now has been hired. And here's a note. Drake's last 3 head coaches, McCollum, DeVries, and Medved, all have been hired by the Big Ten conference schools in the last 6 days. That's a really nice little coaching tree, except it's all going to the Big Ten.
Yeah, Nico Medved's a great hire by Minnesota. I mean, the guy wins. But I had Pierre Nugent on Triple Option earlier. He covers that area. He covers Minnesota. And he says that Minnesota loves hiring Minnesota people. The coach he's replacing, Ben Johnson, a Minnesota guy too. But I think Nico Medved has proven that the last couple stops that he's ready to rock.
Yeah, I think all the talk at the top of the show about the lack of a mid-major was nearly kaput with Colorado State. I mean, they nearly derailed that entire narrative and probably should have. So the whole, there's not a big chest-pounding game. There wasn't that game with Colorado State and Maryland. I mean, there absolutely was. So it hasn't been a complete lack of fireworks. But, that was a brutal finish there for the Rams. And now even more brutal 24 hours because the guy who got you to the dance and had you within a shave of being in the Sweet 16 is now off to big school pastures, which is just sort of your reality now. It always sort of has been, but more so now than ever, I think, for schools like that. They appear to be good hires on paper. Obviously, guys have done very well for themselves in the last few days. But I think the question that I have out of this is, who does West Virginia go after now? Because based on what I saw, these two guys were the two guys who were at the top of their list. Mm-hmm. Obviously, trendy names because of what they're doing in the tournament. Now, a lot more people know them than they did prior to the last couple of weeks. But those were two names that I saw thrown around quite a bit for the Mountaineers. They're gone now, so where do they look next? I don't know enough about the job yet to know that. I'll read a bit about it. But, yeah, you would think that you're feeling a little disappointed that you still don't have a guy if you're West Virginia, and now you're seeing some other targets come off the board.
So there we are, 3 coaching changes. Sean Miller, we mentioned obviously McCollum, and then Medved. They're all into the Big Ten. Baylor, Langston Love. Duke beat the hell out of them on Sunday. Just had too much Baylor probably played as well as they could for 10 or 12, 14 minutes and just overwhelmed. Duke is fantastic. Langston Love, he's entered the portal. They lost L.J. Cryer a year after they won the national title. Ended up being the best player along with, there's a lot of really good players. He was phenomenal for Houston in their win to get to the Sweet 16. Langston Love spent a lot of time in the training room, spent a lot of time not being able to play, nursing injuries. He had a torn ACL his freshman year. He's good, but is he available? He will end up getting a lot of money somewhere, and I wish him the best of luck. But when I saw that he entered the portal, I was not surprised. Good luck to him with where he ends up. But Baylor sure has lost a few. They've gained some in the portal, but they lost a few. And that Cryer was the one that's come back to hurt him quite a bit.
Yeah, actually, Scott has really only lost 2 guys that over the entire time. Like Matthew Mayer didn't really tear it up in Illinois in the way that he was.
Who was the guy that went to Illinois with him?
Dane Danger.
Yeah.
Dane Danger was better at Illinois. Although I don't know if that was like.
Well, he's playing in Memphis now.
Yeah. So he's at another place. L.J. Cryer's the one. Al Freeman, when he went to NC State, was the same exact player that he was at Baylor the year before, which is really good. But for the most part, he doesn't lose guys that go on and play better other places. I hope that this is true for Langston Love because he's a really good guy. But I do think it's better for both sides because they were because of the other injuries they had, so dependent on him being healthy that him not being there derailed a lot of this season. And he just never really got over that first injury he had the first year he got here when he tore his ACL. It was always up and down how much Langston was going to be available. So I think this is better for both sides. I hope he makes a bunch of money. I hope he goes somewhere and gets better. But I do think for this Baylor team moving forward, it's better to not have to worry about him anymore.
I think this is kind of similar to a Cam Rising thing of – he's a guy with some talent and could help you win some games when he's full go, but the question becomes every time you're about to take the court is is he available or not? Mm-hmm. I think that's just something that wears on you mentally and probably emotionally. And so as much as I'm sure the team loves him and vice versa, and as much as he wants to be out there and vice versa, for some reason he just can't be available for the most part for Scott Drew and company. And so if he can go off somewhere else and they have a training staff or his body just decides to cooperate and he's able to play and be a full version of himself, then that's going to bode really well for another team out there. But I think at this point, you've got to try that if you're him. It's not working in Waco. Like it's just not. I mean, you're not available. So what are you going to spend another year and just sit around in the same training room and just hope like, well, hopefully it's no, at least go somewhere else and just see something different for, see what other training rooms look like or see what another court looks like and just see if a change in scenery can do your body some good. I wish him the best. It's unfortunate it didn't work out better. Obviously, very talented player. Nobody wrote this ending to this part of the story, but I do think it's a mutually beneficial move. So,
we're both
wish each other the best and go your separate ways and maybe see you down the line and can laugh and smile about the situation. But what did y'all think of just the year as a whole? I mean, both of the teams go out. But
disappointing.
Yeah.
No doubt. They had one guy inside. Disappointing. He got hurt. There's no depth. The guards couldn't shoot consistently enough. Roach thought he was going to be a point guard. He's not a point guard. Wright's a young, good-looking freshman. You hear about roster construction, whatever. This is not who they are. This is not acceptable. It doesn't mean Scott Drew's in trouble. My God, he just won a national title. But this is now, since they won it, the loss to North Carolina in Fort Worth in that classic overtime game, they have not reached the goals that you have to reach if you have the facilities, the NIL, the coach, and the recruiting abilities.
Actually, I think going forward, if you look at classic Scott Drew deep runs, they're built around a guy like Rob Wright, who reminds me a lot of Pierre Jackson and Tweety Carter, and their point guards who are a little bit smaller, but dogs. I mean, absolute fearless players. Rob Wright's that kind of guy who, all right, you need me to go to the rack 10 times? I'll go to the rack 10 times.
And it matures physically.
Yeah. And I think that's not a problem. But, I mean, he's got that in him. And, of course, Tweety Carter, who was the first one of those guys, is there on staff. I don't think there could be a better matching of assistant coach and player in that regard. If you go and then get longer, like that's the other thing about this team that was probably a little bit troubling, because even some of their four-guard or deeper teams had guys who were longer, taller guards that were more stretch players that they could have. They didn't really have that with this team. So if they go out and get more size, more strength inside, depth inside, absolute depth inside, I think this is a better way to jump off behind a Rob Wright and then see, building the team around that and seeing where it goes, I think is really more classic Scott Drew. But again, it's a different way to build a team, so we'll see how they do. I think, though, that they have a little bit more potential building a team point guard back than they do any other way.
Yeah, I do too. But they did not. They've had some issues. Of course, Yves Missy leaving maybe early when you didn't know if he would. When you get the one and dones and they're good, that's great. But then they're gone. But Scott will figure it out. And, of course, the coaching changes they've had ever since the national championship, with a lot of guys being head coaches, also can wear you out a little bit. On one of the notes from Big Jack 512 was that LJ learned how to play better defense. He was on one of the best defensive teams ever in that 21 national championship, and now he's on one of the best defenses ever at Houston with what they have surrounding him. He was a blanker he was a bad dude on Saturday in their win to move into the Sweet 16. Now, UConn was beaten, two-time defending champions knocked out. Dan Hurley, walking off the court, shouted some expletives, and it was on tape. I want you to, this is from a reporter who caught it on tape. And here is an anchor for the news station that was covering the game on a controversy that came up because of someone in the media relations department at UConn said to the reporter.
I hope they don't do that to you, man.
That's the video that's gone viral online of UConn head coach Dan Hurley voicing his displeasure with the referees and the Huskies' loss to the #1 ranked Florida Gators. Charlotte Sports Live's own Joey Ellis took that video and then was confronted by UConn Director of Communications Bobby Mullen. Mullen asked for that video that had gone viral to be removed. He then threatened Joey, saying he would, quote, ruin his life if he didn't. This was heard by multiple other reporters and staff on hand. Our management asked Mullen for a statement on the incident, and here's what he said. The lasting image of Coach Hurley leaving the court should have been his walking off the court arm in arm with the seniors, overwhelmed with emotion. Instead, a reporter who was in an area he should not have been recorded on his cell phone a private comment made to members of another coaching staff, end quote. Charlotte Sports Live and Queen City News, stand by Joey Ellis' reporting.
All right, first of all, Hurley is at times, you never know what you're going to get from him. The SID, stay out of your, I mean, I understand you're the guy with the program, but to threaten the reporter, to ruin his life, I don't know what's going to happen to him. I don't want him to lose his job, but that was over the top. The guy was doing his job because remember what was said. Other members of the media were there and heard the same thing. So they were in that same spot, and using that statement as an excuse instead of just apologizing was just very unprofessional.
I think so. And the lasting image, like, again, if you're going to do something in public, you don't get to, you know.
In the day and age of television and cameras and stuff, yeah.
You don't get to decide,
Phones.
well, this is what the lasting image is. If you're going to do that and be a little whiny baby walking off the court complaining about the officiating it should have been a walking arm in arm. All right, well, then, first of all, if that's what he wanted the image to be, he should have done that. Like, he shouldn't have done the other thing. And second of all, everybody's a reporter now. That reporter, and this is for people who don't know how it works, like, they hold us in an area.
Yep.
And then they let you go when the team crosses the court. So I don't know what he means about not going in an area. I've tried to get across to a closer bathroom before, and they said, no, sorry, you got to walk all the way around. I'm like, I'm just going to pee, man. And they're like, nope, sorry, behind the line. You're like, all right, well, okay, here we go. Yeah, so that was a BS answer from the SID.
Yeah, I mean, this just seems like one of those, I guess, entertaining for Twitter type stories. I could care less. I mean, I really do not care what Dan Hurley said. I mean, obviously people aren't up in arms about what he said towards Baylor, you know, basically telling them, hope you don't get screwed by the refs like we did. That wasn't a big deal. But the SID's response is what made this a story to begin with. And I dare that dude to sit there and walk up to me in that situation and tell me and talk to me and try to threaten me. That must have been a young reporter because grizzled me at this point been like, excuse me, what? Like, it would have gone way more viral. I promise you that. I'm not saying I would have like beat the dude's ass or something on camera, but that would have been a lot louder. There would not have been a yes sir or anything along those lines. There would have been a lot of pushback because that's just entirely uncalled for and unprofessional on that dude's part. Danny Hurley is not God. He does not get to dictate how other people cover him, especially when he's doing things in public, no matter what image you're trying to portray. So, yeah, just a stupid look by that guy and a big mistake that hopefully he improves as an SID from and learns a lesson from. But, yeah, that's a dumb move that obviously came back to bite them in the ass, and so they're getting a little bit of that backlash today, and then hopefully everybody will just move on from it. But I know Hurley is a very polarizing guy, so there's, I'm sure, maybe not some genuine actors making this a bigger thing than it actually is, but to me it's not that big of a deal, honestly.
Yeah, no, you're right, and he's been on edge, but he's always on edge. He was on edge before they won their first of the two in a row, but a lot of times this year what he was doing was pointing up in the stands when people were heckling him or whatever, two rings. Well, now you don't have one. You're a great coach, fantastic coach, but he was talking about how you got to take this moment and enjoy it with your players, and it's unfortunate, it's over, da-da-da-da, and then he goes into the tunnel
He's
and
screaming
says
at
what he says.
the team about to start playing. I hope they don't get screwed by the refs. So, yeah, like it was a moment that he created to begin with, so the SID maybe should have talked to Dan Hurley and told him, hey, remember that choreographed moment that we wanted to create? And you riding off and skipping into the sunset? Maybe should have started there instead of going into the tunnel and yelling at the other team about how they're hopefully not going to get screwed by the refs like your team did. So
also,
he created that.
Not the same referee crew. They have two crews.
There
they
you
rotate like between the games. So he was condemning a crew that had yet to screw anybody. Like, it wasn't like the same guys are going to be out there. And that's all up for conjecture. But also, when you're the two-time defending national champion, you're not getting screwed that much refereeing. Like, it hasn't happened to you in those 2 years. Like, so maybe like when you don't get calls that you do against a team that was clearly better than you. And this is Florida. It's coming out of my mouth. Clearly better. I mean,
UConn
almost won, but or as good as you.
Yes,
clearly
yes.
as good as you. Sorry. Clearly as good as you, then, and on a hotter streak than you are. Yeah, all right. I mean, UConn almost pulled it off, and they did that with experience.
I turned my attention away.
Yeah.
Maybe when I was trying to find my wallet that I left at a laundromat or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But again, it's just stop doing these things. Like, don't do those things, Danny Hurley, and people will notice. But yeah,
he's got a temper. I have a temper. It's not easy, but does not mean it's acceptable ever. Kim Coulter, Smokey, go ahead and say it. Fantastic coach who's also an asshole.
Yeah,
nothing wrong with the truth. Good point.
No, he's a fantastic coach. He's got the rings to prove it, but yeah, he's a bit of an a-hole, and I think he'd probably admit to as much. And so I think we all kind of see it for what it is, and with that comes some good and comes some bad. And the incident like last night could have been, a nothing burger, but he decides to pop off, and his SID maybe rubbing off a little bit too much on him, decides to be an aggressive a-hole as well, and it turned into what it turned into. It's not the end of the world. Nobody's getting fired. Although that SID might want to be careful because the wrong move, and you probably would get fired after this now. But, yeah, he's a great coach and definitely not the most likable guy some of the time.
I had an information director in college who's been in the business a long, long time tell me that, unfortunately, because of certain coaches and their personalities, dynamic, or whatever ways that sometimes media relations people can get a little bit not intimidated by them, but they want to make sure they're okay and want to be a part of that. And in this case, maybe that's what happened with this guy. I don't know what's going to happen to him, but it wasn't a good look at all. And the statement was even worse, in my opinion. Tony Green leaving Nikki Collins' staff, by the way, at Baylor to take the job where Molly Miller was at Grand Canyon. He becomes their head coach. She now is the head coach at Arizona State. Congratulations to TCU and K-State in the women's Sweet 16, and West Virginia will try to get there. They're playing North Carolina a little bit later on today.
Yeah, congratulations to those schools, and I think it's a really exciting hire for Arizona State. Somebody who should fit in really well. Obviously, there's already the proximity and all of that, but somebody who's got a little bit of a fan following and brings some fresh excitement to that women's basketball program. So, yeah, I think that was a great hire for the league, and great to have a couple teams that are still in contention with the women's side of the tournament as well. So, yeah, we'll see what the Mountaineers can do as a possible addition to that. But I really liked that move, and it made all the sense in the world for Arizona State to go get Molly Miller. So.
No question. I was able to go watch part of the game Friday afternoon in a win for Baylor, but was enjoying watching her as she coached her team. She has an aura about her, no question. The women's 16 also includes Texas. Oklahoma's trying to get there for a couple of schools that are in the area and in our neighborhood, too. When we come back, he is the AD at TCU. He's next. This is Mike Buddy, next on 365 Sports. Petty Clinic, lowt.com. Man, can you watch anything now? Any sports at all, or any shows, or even if you're watching something on maybe Netflix or whatever, if they do go to a commercial, it's not about testosterone level for men. 1 out of every 3 to 4 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. That could be you. Maybe it's not. When you're 22, you don't worry about it. You might be 62 and don't have to worry about it. 1 out of every 3 or 4 men, though, as you get into your upper 30s, 40s, and then even older, you could start to lose the levels of your testosterone. And so if that happens, what do? You just kind of deal with it? Lethargic, your sex drive drops. Those are part of things that happen with Father Time, too. Dr. Kent Petty in Waco can help you out. Go to their website, pettycliniclowt.com, and get in touch with them. And tell them that you might have some of those, or you don't feel right. He then will set you up to get your blood work, take care of that appointment for you, get the results, and if your testosterone level is fine. If it's too low, he can give you some options to increase your testosterone level so you can become the high-performance man that you want to be, need to be, used to be at pettycliniclowt.com.
month at Allen Samuels in Waco. Right now, drive home a 2025 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab or Ram Lone Star Crew Cab, both with massive $15,000 off MSRP. Looking for unbeatable value? Drive home a Ram 1500 Tradesman Quad Cab starting at just $35,995, or upgrade to a Tradesman Crew Cab for only $37,995. These deals won't last long. Hurry to Allen Samuels today.
Come by. Let's be friends.
There are hundreds of things that can affect our sleep, but what's affecting yours? Sleep Doctor's Home Sleep Test brings the precision of a sleep lab into the comfort of home to help you get answers and unlock a lifetime of great sleep. Start now at sleepdoctor.com/TV.
I'll never get used to this.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Director of Intercollegiate Athletics at TCU, Mike Buddy, joins me. David Smoak, 365 Sports. And thank you very much for your time. You've got the TCU in the background. I even have kind of a little bit of TCU. I'm not sure if this is purple, but wearing that color in a way too. So let's start with the basketball tournament, if you don't mind. And hey, Big 12 with 4 of the 7 are advancing into the Sweet 16, the best percentage of anybody, no matter how many people got in. Your thoughts on how happy and how important that was, especially with the way things are going right now in athletics?
Yeah, I mean, it's more important than ever to be relevant, to be competitive. And, you know, Commissioner Yormark sat with me yesterday at our women's game, and he was really excited. At the time, we thought we had a legitimate shot at getting 5. You know, Iowa State, you know, didn't play their best last night, but to get 4 in there, you got to feel good. You know, 7 is a lot record for the SEC, but to have 4 right there with the Big Ten, and then, you know, Duke is the lone ACC team that survived. So great to be relevant, but great to be on the same, you know, plane as the Big Ten. but certainly still work left to do, and hopefully all four can advance to the next level.
Well, your thoughts about you mentioned your women's team, of course, a huge win, and they're now on to the next round, and they've been knocking on this door, and you just re-signed your head coach to an extension. How important is that right now, besides the obvious?
Well, yeah, I mean, it sends a message, right? Anytime that you have an elite level coach that's doing a remarkable job, to show a commitment to TCU the way that he has says a lot about what we have to offer, and a belief that he has that we have the resources and tools and facilities and infrastructure that you need to be perennial, Big 12 champs. And so for Mark to see that can exist here, I mean, the guy can coach, the guy can recruit. He's a great fit socially, emotionally. He's got just such a great focus on the well-being of these young people, and it resonates with them. And so, for the guy to show up here 2 years ago, the 2-year anniversary of Mark's employment was yesterday. So you think about 2 years ago, he inherited a team that went 1-17 in Big 12 play, and then to finish up the regular season 16-2, just 2 years later, win the regular season, win the tournament, and now get a chance to go back for a rematch with Notre Dame down in Birmingham. Just an incredible job, an incredible testament to Coach Campbell, the staff that he's built, and the young women who placed their faith in him and trust in his process. And to be 33-3, just a couple years removed from struggling, and just 1 year removed from having opening tryouts on campus, just to field 5 healthy players on the court at one time. It's just a remarkable story of success.
I saw him and your team when they beat Baylor to close out the regular season, to clinch the regular season title. And yeah, you could tell that just like it was such a huge moment then. And of course, winning the conference championship, and then of course, moving on to where you are right now. How concerned, or is that the right word, with what athletics is right now, with so many changes, the House settlement coming up, the separation of what seemed like even among the Power Four conferences, NIL, transfer portal? How do you juggle all of this at one time?
Well, it's kind of twofold. One is trying to advocate at the conference and national level, just to hope that this thing stays on the rails, or a lot of people would argue gets back on the rails. And then, locally, you manage it locally to make sure that TCU is best positioned, that when the music stops, that we have a chair, and that we're in the right chair for us as an institution, and, defining what that reality looks like, and making sure that the chancellors and the athletic director and, everybody that's involved, from the trustees on down, we need to make sure that we land where we want to be as an institution and as an athletic department. And so what we're trying to do is just position ourselves as best as we can to be as nimble and flexible as possible, so that if and when there's another, realignment, or another just some sort of cataclysmic event like the House settlement, we have our ducks in a row, and we're ready to go at the drop of a hat. And honestly, the best way that you do that is to be extremely relevant and competitive in football, and potentially basketball and baseball as other revenue generating sports for us here at TCU. But it starts and ends with football. I mean, that's what drives this landscape. So we're really focused on making sure that Coach Dykes and his staff have everything that they need. Excited that spring ball starts tomorrow, but I don't get overly concerned with it or worried about it. I'll be in DC next week to help lobby some elected officials to help try to standardize some national standards across the board, so that each state isn't creating their own set of rules and regulations that really put at jeopardy the competitive spirit of what the NCAA was meant to be.
Do the congressmen really understand what's at stake?
No. And, my previous life at my old employer down at West Point, I had a lot of conversations with a lot of elected officials who were heavily involved in certainly our nation's military, as you would expect. And I would have conversations with them in April about, hey, if this happens, here's what that means for Olympic sports. Here's what that means for non-revenue men's sports. Here's what that means for the United States position as an Olympic power for the next 20 years. And then I would see them 4 months later, and they would ask the same question, and I would give the same answer. So I'm not sure how much it resonates. And that's not an indictment on them. They've got a lot bigger problems, in my opinion. But we've invited them into this. The NCAA, I think we lacked some foresight and the ability to handle our own problems. It really necessitated Congress and our elected officials getting involved. So we've made our own bed at this point. So all we can do really is continue to lobby and educate them on what this means. And, they're all human beings. So they want to know, if you're the senator from Florida, you want to know how this is going to impact your Gators or your Seminoles or your Hurricanes. What we need to do is kind of remove the personal engagement from it and do what's best nationwide to maintain competitive equity as best we can. You can't fault the Big Ten and the SEC for getting more dollars generated. That's what their commissioners are paid to do. But at some point, if there's nobody left to be competitive, and this is the first time in a long time, or maybe ever, that there's no non-Power 5 institutions in the Sweet 16 of the men's tournament, and I'm not sure that's a good thing.
With what the SEC and Big Ten are getting, and then getting more in the basketball tournament, and they're going to get more of the college football playoff, and then they might end up getting at-large berths or automatic qualifiers. Can you, as a Big 12, as programs, keep up with that, with 50, 60, 70, $80 million differences year in and year out?
Well, we can't keep up with it financially, but we can certainly do everything that we can to keep up with them competitively. And again, not to harp on my previous institution, but Army West Point, we were 12-2 in football this year. Not one kid got a dollar of NIL money. None of them are going to get revenue share, and we can't take kids out of the transfer portal. So obviously it can be done, and obviously that's a unique situation with academies. But there are underpaid kids on every roster. Shoot, you watched a young lady last night from Louisville who put up, I think, 41 points against us. There are young people out there extremely talented that are not charging you $1 million for their services. You just have to find them. And what I love about TCU in particular is we have this innate ability with our coaches to develop talent. So we can find these kids that maybe are underappreciated, undervalued, and develop them as athletes and as students and as young people. And hopefully what TCU can do is get them kind of hooked on the spirit of Fort Worth and the great things that are going on campus. And then they stay here for maybe a few dollars less than what they could command on the open market because they're having so much fun and enjoying themselves. So all of us in the Big 12 understand that there is a revenue gap. We're trying to close that gap. Certainly, Commissioner Yormark is working night and day to try to create revenue opportunities for us. But we're not going to be on a level playing field with them financially. That doesn't mean we can't be on a level playing field with them competitively.
When you guys meet as a conference with Brett Yormark and others, but everybody there as a conference, is there a chip on your shoulder? Is there an all-in everybody together right now? Because I don't think you could afford anyone to fracture and say that might happen in 5 years, but is everybody all in right now together within the conference?
Yeah, 100%. And actually we're trying to create an unofficial relationship with our friends at the ACC who are in a similar boat, and not like an alliance or anything, but just making sure that if they've got good ideas, they're sharing them with us. If we've got good ideas, we're sharing it with them. But we are absolutely unanimously supportive. We've got an athletic director's Big 12 AD's text thread that has just been lighting up with, congratulations to BYU for, finding a way to get to the Sweet 16. Last night, Arizona's great win, gritty kind of game. We're all pulling for each other to continue to advance, continue to show that we can be and will be competitive. And there is a camaraderie and spirit, and kind of just, it's a group of tough-minded, individuals in that room too. So absolutely there's a chip on our shoulders, and we want to fight to prove that we belong and that we can continue to advance in this tournament and beyond.
All right. You had mentioned, and that's awesome that you were at West Point. My father was a Naval Academy graduate back in the 1953. There's nothing better than that day. There's discussions about whether or not that they can continue to hold that game separately. Number two is, are we ever going to get to a point where college football or athletics is so professional we lose those traditions?
Well, I don't think we'll lose those traditions. As long as Air Force, Navy, and Army are on similar footing and have the same rules and regulations, they'll always compete against each other in every sport that they sponsor. And they're never going to drop sports, and they're not going to. What I appreciate about those places is they know what their mission is, and athletics is a part of the bigger picture. There, it will never be the big picture. They utilize athletics and competition as a way to help train young people to defend our Constitution, and so, it's great. And regardless of what happens in the rest of the world and the rest of the country, they're going to continue to keep that rivalry. There were 2 bowl games played on the same day as Army Navy this past year, but those groups do all that they can to at least keep the time sacred. So they kicked one, I think, at noon, and they kicked one at 7 and left that 3:30 window exclusive to Army Navy. And it may be outside of the control of them eventually if there continues to be more bowl games and if the CFB expansion cuts into that date. But the people that those games are meaningful for will continue to watch and pay attention. And, there's a lot of goodness in that game. There has always been, even more so now because the landscape is so different and so professionalized. But what's great about Army Navy is it's just still a group of 22 guys on the field at any one given time, all of whom are willing to die for every person watching the game. And there's just tremendous value to that, and we don't want to forget that.
What was that like the first time you were at a game where they both start coming on, marching on the field? Is that that gives me goosebumps, and I've been watching it for 5 or 6 decades.
Yeah, and imagine once you actually have some personal relationships with these young people. So you actually know them as human beings. You know their struggles. You know their incredible commitment. I was humbled every day. My neighbors at the academy were all colonels that were up at 5:30 doing workouts, and they're my age. I felt lazy when I'm sitting there drinking coffee as they're backpedaling up the hill outside of my house. But I didn't have that sewn into my fabric. Thank God that there are still young people that volunteer their time and potentially their health and welfare to defend our Constitution, defend our way of life. It's wonderful to be there 5.5 years. So many good things just rubbed off on me through osmosis, just being around these kids who go to class every day. They don't look at their cell phones. They're not on TikTok like, most college students. They're up before dawn. They're working out. They're making a commitment physically, mentally, emotionally, to be in the best position to keep our country free. And that's, it's just a phenomenal experience. I'm very thankful to have had the opportunity to work for those young people who do everything you asked and more.
You have SMU this year, a non-conference, and that's been a rivalry. It's been intense, right next to each other. SMU now part of the ACC. Is that a rivalry that you would like to see continue? And number 2, what is your philosophy when it comes to college football non-conference schedules?
Well, the philosophy is to continue to put ourselves in the best position to be in the CFP. And so how you utilize those 3 non-conference games, Coach Dykes and I, certainly he has a voice in that process. I love that we're one of 2 schools in the country that are playing 11 Power 4 opponents this year. We want to balance the ability to have winnable games with attractive opponents to be able to help our season ticket holders see value in their investment in our program. And then I think we'll always kind of have one game that we buy where you want to have the opportunity for some of your young people to dip their toes in it and get better early in the season, get some confidence. So yeah, as far as SMU, if that fits into that outline, there's certainly nothing against it. I'm learning from TCU faithful here in my first couple months on the jobs that very few people consider that a rivalry other than the geography. There's just not a whole lot of reason. And of course, Damon Evans was just announced as their new athletic director. I know Damon a little bit. I don't know him well, but I look forward to welcoming him. I guess that makes me the longest tenured athletic director in DFW, which is kind of ironic as I'm still unpacking boxes from my house.
One more thing or 2, and Mike Buddy, again, TCU AD with us on 365 Sports. Your basketball program, the women in the Sweet 16. Jamie Dixon's a hell of a coach, second time around, been around a second time quite a bit, was at Pitt. Does he have everything he needs for TCU to compete in the Big 12 conference as good as it is to be able to get to the NCAA tournament and have success?
I don't think so. And not yet, right? What we know is there are some great schools in this league that have really invested well. And we're ahead of the curve from an NIL standpoint. And what I know is, even though we were a little bit late to the game, by Jamie's own admission, you mentioned it, that the guy can coach, he can develop young people. And so just like we talked about with the SEC and the Big Ten, we don't necessarily have to have the biggest pot of gold to get to where we are, but we need to be really thoughtful in who and where we invest the funds that we do have. And what I'm really excited about when the calendar turns here for July 1 is we flip from this NIL Wild West pay for play mentality to the new world of rev-share, where everybody's going to pretty much have the same pool of money to work with from a payroll standpoint. And then the NIL that you can earn on top of it from all corners of the information that we're getting is it's going to be true NIL. It's not going to be get a donor to give you $1 million and you give it to the athlete. It's got to be through a corporate entity. There has to be an advertisement or connection with goods and services. So it can't be, I'm going to go read books to a fifth grade class and get $1 million for it. And so we're excited that Deloitte will be the third party group that really operates the clearinghouse to say, hey, if you're gonna be the spokesman for a local pizza company, that's worth $40,000 a year, whether that's in Columbus, Ohio, or Austin, Texas, or Tuscaloosa, Alabama, or Fort Worth, Texas. And so we hope that levels the playing field as it's designed to do. We hope that there will be significant punitive measures, as we're hearing there will be, for people who violate the new regulations. So I think when that happens, all the great things with our facilities, our campus, our education, our size, our location will help Coach Dixon really kind of get back to where where he's had this program, which has been a remarkable run on his part. But as you noted, right, our women made it to the Sweet 16. It's the first time that TCU has had a basketball program, men's or women, in the Sweet 16. And we certainly know that Jamie has the talent and competence to do it. We just have to make sure that our talent level gives us a chance to stay in the game.
The college football playoff is going to expand, and within a year it will. One out of 12 spots for the Big 12 is not very good, but it's at least a spot. 2 out of 16 is better percentage-wise, but is that enough? And what are your thoughts? I saw some of the reaction coming out of the meetings that you guys don't like this automatic qualifier, the way it's staggered from one conference to the other. What do you do about that?
Well, we advocate and fight, and we're starting to do it publicly, as you said. Coming out of those meetings, every NCAA team sport championship that is conducted grants one automatic qualifying spot per conference. The baseball tournament is that way, the basketball tournament is that way, and we think that the CFP should be that way. And ironically, we're one of the two Power Fours, that aren't at the financial level as the Big Ten and the SEC. We just think it's counterproductive to assume that you should get 4 AQs in any one season. They could very well be the fourth team in one of those leagues is not even ranked in the top 25. And I don't know why you wouldn't be comfortable just saying each of us gets 1 AQ and then you earn your way in. History has shown, the SEC in particular, they would get 4 teams in a lot of years. But to just go ahead and say it's going to be 4 didn't seem to make sense. And we believe, hey, we'll take 1 AQ and we'll take our chances that we're going to have a great 2, 3, 4 team with the depth and talent in this league that'll be in a position to get an invitation to it as well. I just don't think that you give AQs just because they're asked for. But again, those two conferences have a great voice and a lot of funding to be able to get behind the movement. But hopefully calmer heads prevail and we say, hey, the Big Ten gets 1, the SEC gets 1, the Big 12 gets 1, and the ACC gets 1. And then the next best 8 teams, whether that's a group of 5 school or whether that's 8 teams from the same league, they've earned their way into the opportunity to compete for the CFP. And so we're hoping that's the direction it goes, but that will remain to be seen.
A hell of a pitcher for Wake Forest, of course, played with the Yankees in baseball, the Brewers, won a World Series ring, which had to be amazing. So what's more difficult? You're facing the team's best hitter, 3-2 count, 2 out, bases loaded. You have the game is tied, or facing college athletics in what we have today. What's more difficult?
Honestly, facing what we're doing in college athletics today.
I know.
Because when you're on the mound with the ball in your hand, at least you control your destiny, right? And you get to decide what pitch you want to throw, the location you want to throw it, and then you alone are responsible for executing that pitch. What's frustrating in our world right now is we're operating on the assumption that this House settlement is going to be signed, and we certainly have a level of confidence. But what if it doesn't get signed? We've spent a year and a half getting ready to essentially start operating payroll come July 1st. And we don't even know if the judge is going to approve the settlement terms as is. So we are trying to see around a wall that's 30 feet ahead of us. None of us has a crystal ball. And that's frustrating because we really can't control our own destiny or plan into the future, financially and otherwise, until we really kind of have some sort of clue if Congress is going to grant us some sort of national standard that will allow the NCAA to still be our governing board and create rules that are standard throughout all 50 states, let alone if these revenues that we're setting aside, assuming we're going to get the opportunity to share with our young people, if that's even going to be approved. So a lot of craziness. All you can do is be as prepared as you can. And as I mentioned earlier, just be flexible and nimble in case you need to shift.
Mike, great stuff. Really, really appreciate your time. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your week. Good luck to the women as they move forward. And there you go. There you go. Mike
Thanks,
Buck,
David.
Director of Intercollegiate Athletics at TCU with me, David Smoak, 365 Sports. He almost got me to do the frog. He almost did. Why not, right? We follow all these Big 12 schools. USF football coach Alex Golish will join us here in just a moment. The Baylor Club inside McLean Stadium, Mike Molsel, the general manager, and a fantastic place to eat. In fact, coming up, the dinner features this week. Tomorrow night, the Smokehouse Burger, St. Louis pork ribs on Wednesday, fried shrimp, catfish basket on Thursday, steak and lobster, their go-to on Friday, and prime rib on Saturday. Draft beer, house liquor drinks, house wine, and cocktails, all with special prices. And they, of course, a great place. It's a great place to have any kind of business meeting, even if it's you and a client, a customer that you want to get off to the side. They got some rooms that are like glass windows or whatever, but private. And if you have a banquet, a dinner, some kind of speaking engagement, you can do that inside the Baylor Club. Just get in touch with them, and they will help you out. Tell them that you watch what we do on 365 Sports, and there's always a little extra something for you along the way, a little slight discount or maybe an opportunity that you don't know is there. The Baylor Club inside McLean Stadium off I-35 in the Brazos River in Waco.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears!
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
He enters year 3 at USF. The Bulls. Alex Golesh, the head football coach, joins us on 365 Sports. And, Coach, thank you very much. There was a tweet just a few weeks ago when Tennessee-Nebraska series was, interrupted, when Danny White said, we didn't cancel, we're looking for this and that, and you said, sup, what's up? I love your personality. I absolutely love that. I know you coached there at one point. Did Danny White call you back?
I'll keep that between us, but just a matter of I think timing on that one not working out. But you know what? More than anything, you want your guys to know that you'll play anybody, anywhere, anytime, and our schedule next year sets up to where we better be ready to rock and roll early, and I figured why not in 26 as well.
You anywhere, any place, any time, for a school like yours right now that is getting an influx of attention, of facilities, of all these things that are going on, is a really exciting philosophy. And what's it like to be a part of that, to be a school that is, USF is growing. I grew up down in Fort Myers, and it was not even close to what it was now when I was a kid.
Yeah, you know what? It's such a unique situation here. You know, we've played football here for 27 years, and you're in a place in a TV market that's huge. You know, I think it's the 11th biggest market now in the country. We got 53,000 students, and so you're right in Tampa. Obviously, where you guys are is big time high school football. Where we are is big time high school football, and so you're at a place where you're just 27 years in, and so you're trying to catch up as fast as you can in this climate of college football where time isn't probably on your side all the time, and you're trying to close this gap. And so, you know, for us, I think it's so big to go and play whoever we can that'll raise our profile. You know, there was a point about 10 years ago in the days of the Big East, I guess now 12 years ago, where you were in the same conference with Miami down the road. And so now you're not anymore. And so you're trying to get it to where you can set yourself up to where at the end of the year, you're playing to compete in the playoff and continue to raise the brand and continue to have awareness, especially here in the state, of who we are, what we're doing.
I guess that kind of plays into the question here, but year 3 now, your third spring, you guys got started earlier this month. I know you got Pro Day coming up tomorrow as well. What's the theme of year 3 of spring football with Alex Golesh down there in Tampa? What's kind of the theme of this offseason, I guess, if you will, in the ramp up to later on this year?
Yeah, I think we inherited a program 2 years ago that had won 4 games in 3 years. So in a climate where you want instant results and you want things to happen really quickly, we had to get into this program and build a foundation of winning. You had to lay some sort of foundation for something that hadn't been done in a couple of years. And so for the first 2 years, we've just tried to learn the things it takes to win. We got the same coordinators going into year 3. So you feel like you've got continuity. You feel like you've got this foundation laid of what it looks like to have success. And now for us this spring is identifying and pinpointing what our identity is going to be. And I think it's easy from a coach talk perspective to say, man, this is what I want our identity to be. But I think January, February, March, April is when you truly build your identity as a program, and certainly as a team. And so for us, it's been, what is our identity? What do we want it to be? And act that way all the time. And so as we go into year 3 here, we've learned how to win. We've learned why we failed, and we've grown. And now it's a matter of putting it all together and again, create this identity that through good and bad in the fall, we can overcome.
I'm sure you've talked about it with your colleagues before, and I'm sure you've seen the conversations going on with Deion Sanders and Fran Brown trying to put together some spring scrimmages and practices. What are your thoughts on that whole idea? And, what would you add to it or like it, dislike about it? Just kind of where's your mind when it comes to crossover spring stuff?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of where you are in your program. I think for both of those guys, and I'm obviously not sitting in their chairs for Prime going into year 3 and for Fran going into year 2, you feel like you have an idea of what your team is, and I think it's awesome. I think it could be super beneficial to go bang on somebody else for a couple of days. It would certainly be a big deal from a revenue generation, which is huge everywhere. Right now, it would give you another revenue stream in the spring, both from a TV standpoint and from a just getting butts in the seat standpoint. I think if I go back to year 1, I don't know that I would want to do that. I think you're trying to figure out exactly who you are and what you're doing. But I think everybody that's canceling spring games and saying that it's a reason, giving the reason of man, we don't want our guys to be seen by people taking them in the portal, I think is kind of wild. I feel like that train has gone and passed at this point. So I think it would give you something to be excited about. I think it would give your guys something uniquely different at the end of spring to be excited about. And it would certainly give you the ability to generate revenue, which I think is critical, both I would think anywhere in the country right now. So I'd be all about it. I think we've talked in coaching circles about it for years. And I'm glad Prime said something publicly.
Alex, what is the Alex Golesh standard? How would you define that?
Yeah, I think it's as simple as being elite in everything we do. I'm really, really process driven, really process oriented. I think I learned a long time ago that you don't control the end result. All you control is your day-to-day. Control how you go to work every day. Control how you treat your teammates, coworkers, how you attack every single thing you do, and the mindset that you attack it with. And I think there's one way to do it, and that's an elite clip. And I think you continue to chase that level every single day. And I think that's really hard to do. It's hard for adults to do. I think it's even harder to do for 18 to 22, 23-year-olds. But I think it's our job to teach these young men how to do it. I think it's our job to hold them to the standard and never minimize the standard. And I think if we as leaders in the program, the coaches, live that way, teach that way, go about our business that way every single day, then the standard in the program is going to continue to go up. And said it when I got here that we're going to get this place to an elite level. Well, we got to go to work that way every single day. And that's our standard. That's how we go about our business every single day. And it's us against us until the 12 Saturdays in the fall.
You guys have a bit of a unicorn this year in that you've got a quarterback who is back for his third year in Byron Brown starting for you. What does that do for a spring practice to allow you to hit the ground running and also get reps from young guys because you know what you have a little bit more, and maybe Byron can get a little breather and stretch his legs during spring a little bit more than maybe he would have 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think a unique situation just because Byron 2 years ago won the job, had an incredible redshirt freshman year, went into last year as the starter and got hurt week 5. And, we had such an up and down early part of the season, played 2 top 10 teams early in the year. And for him to get his footing, he was just starting to come into his own and got hurt, missed the rest of the year for us. And so I think for him, more than anything, understanding the offense, understanding the system, understanding the parts around him, it's certainly next level. And he can kind of dive deep into what's the next level part of what we do offensively. I think for him, missing the last 8 games of the year last year, or at least most of the last 8 games of the year, I think he feels like he's got a lot to prove to himself, a lot to prove to his teammates, for him to get back into being one of the best quarterbacks in the country, which is where he left off when he got hurt. And so it's definitely beneficial. I think it's huge for us to build around him the depth that we need in that room, but certainly the continuity with the receiver core and the rest of the offense here as we go through spring. So I think if you met Byron, you'd understand that he's not going to want to take a whole lot of days off.
Alex, I was looking at y'all's schedule, and the 4 weeknight games is something that certainly stands out. I know, like here in Big 12 country, there's a lot more Friday night games for exposure, and that's the trade-off that you get. Do you have any particular feeling about playing more weeknight games? Is that kind of a pain? Is absolutely nothing in terms of much of a difference? Kind of how do you view that?
I think for us, anytime you could be on a national stage, it's a huge benefit. You want this logo, you want the brand out as much as you possibly can. I think anytime you get to be the only show on TV, in the American last handful of years, you've had this Friday night game, which has been huge. I think for our guys, it's always been exciting because it's the one night all your buddies across the country are sitting there in their hotel room getting ready for a game on Saturday, getting to watch you. Our guys have always gotten up for that. I think as these TV contracts have gotten to where they've gotten, you're going to get nationally televised games every night of the week. And I think as long as it falls well, whether it's after a bye week, the way ours end up falling is it's after a bye week or it's after another Friday night game. As long as you've got a week to prepare, I think it's all kind of relative. When you start moving days around in our circle or, in the building, it could be a Sunday and the guys will know it as a Tuesday, and they operate on the day of the week of the practice that it is. And I spent 5 years in the MAC. I think we were the originators of Maction back then, where you'd come in on, it's a Wednesday and you're like, man, guys, it is a Thursday today. And literally on our board in our staff room when I was at the University of Toledo, we had a little sign that said today is, and then in a dry erase marker, I was responsible for writing what day of the week it was in football terms. So you start in the MAC, you started to lose track of what day it actually was because you were playing from a Tuesday to a Wednesday to a Thursday back to a Tuesday. You just knew what day of the week it was based on the game week.
Which coach in your career, and obviously Beckman, Matt Campbell, Josh Heupel, who's had, and I'm not asking you to pick your favorite child, but who has the best or maybe had the initial impact on you wanting to coach?
Yeah, I think honestly my high school coach, who's actually our director of player development here, Jeff Jones, was really the first person that I really wanted to be like in terms of professionally. He gave me my first job as a high school coach, and then Coach Tressel gave me an opportunity as a student coach back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I really admired what he did, how he did it, how he went about the relationships with the players and how he got guys to play really, really hard for him. But I've been fortunate enough to be around some really good football minds, some really good head coaches that I think as I got going and as I figured out my own style, as I figured out kind of what I wanted to be, who I wanted to kind of develop into as a teacher, as a coach, I think I got a little bit from everybody. And I've been fortunate enough, Matt's done an incredible job building that program at Iowa State. And I was there with him at Toledo. We were there together at Iowa State from the beginning. Getting to work with Josh at UCF, kind of seeing the tail end of the success there, and then going into a situation at Tennessee where we had to build from scratch. I think that's what prepared me for this opportunity was the several opportunities I had throughout my career to walk into a situation that wasn't awesome and build it. And I think that's why this job was so intriguing to me 2.5 years ago, why I wanted this one in particular, because there has been success here. You had a recruiting base, you had an investment from a university and from an administration, and I've done it at way tougher places. I know you guys cover the Big 12 really, really heavy, and certainly down there at Baylor, but to go into Ames, Iowa and be a part of building a program, it certainly felt like it was going to be a little bit easier in Tampa just because of the talent pool in your own backyard. I don't know if 2.5 years later I felt like it's been easy by any means, because it hasn't, but doing it there, doing it in Knoxville, doing it in Toledo, Ohio, doing it in Champaign, Illinois, I think all prepared me for this opportunity, and doing it with those different guys and seeing them do it a certain way, being involved in doing it a certain way, learning how I wanted to do it, at times learning how I didn't want to do it, but all really, really good experiences leading up to this opportunity.
How did the first 3 games of this schedule come about? Were you guys like truth or dare or something like that? Because this is
anywhere, anytime, whatever.
Like Boise State, Florida, and Miami. That's as good as you can get. 3 games to I'll put it up against anybody's schedule in the season. Fun to watch. Those 3 games gonna be really cool. Yeah,
I think probably in a lot of ways that stuff's done so far ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
I probably had the same question when I first but to get to play a premier team like Boise in terms of what they've been able to do the last 15 20 years, certainly what they did a year ago, is a huge opportunity here at home on a Thursday night on national TV. In a packed out Ray J will be incredible for us. And then getting to go on the road and playing Florida and Miami. We played a year ago, played Bama and Miami, played Bama up there, played Miami here. And I think it's certainly easy to motivate throughout an off season when you know what's coming. But I think as we looked at it 3 years ago, it probably was because in a lot of ways, with a 4-team playoff, you felt like you had to go play a schedule with some premier teams on it to feel like as a group of 5, the only way you were going to get in, similar to what Cincinnati did a couple of years ago, was going to be to play really, really good competition, to have quality wins at the end of the year. Probably a little bit different now with the 12-team playoff and as it continues to evolve. But when it was scheduled, they felt like that was the best thing to do. And you know what, for me, I think 3 games in, you'll know exactly where you are as a team to start the year off. You'll know exactly where you sit on a national landscape, and you'll feel really, really good, or you'll feel like, man, we got a long way to go. But the way our guys are working, it's easy to say, man, like, we got Boise coming in here. It's coming fast. Get your asses to work. And they've certainly done that so far.
Alex, last question. You guys have this new stadium that I read the article by Matt Baker, and of course this is a big deal for you. And we keep hearing about more and more separation at the top, even among Power 4 conferences. Is there a concern that you spend any time at all, by the time you get the stadium and by the time you start to beat teams, and you've done that before, that it might be too late? Or is that something you can concern yourself with?
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. I think it's something that, from a media perspective, gives you something to talk about. I think for us, again, I go back to we're 27 years old as a football program. We've shared Ray J with the Bucks this entire time. It's an awesome home. It's certainly fun to pack that thing out. We've led the league in attendance my first 2 years here. So you're selling something really big in terms of being able to play in an NFL stadium on a huge stage. But from a college football standpoint, it's time, right? 28th football season. It's time we have something on campus. And what our administration's done is they said, you know what, we're not just going to build something as fast as we can and plop it up and say that's it. I think where our administration understands, and I give them a lot of credit, is that in this day and age, you're probably not going to do a whole lot of renovating in 10 years or 15 years. It's the same. We're building a football complex right next to it, which is going to be as nice as there is in the entire country. A huge, huge investment to a brand new football complex, because I think the understanding is you're only going to build that one time, because the way revenue is going right now, you're not going to be able to say, man, we're going to dump 30, 40 more million into an upgrade to a facility. Mm-hmm. And so is it going to be too late? That's an awesome question. I don't know. I think for us, and it's not a cliche coach answer. I think all we can control is right now, today, what we're doing within the walls of this program to build a program that, as conference realignment happens and as things continue to evolve, and they're evolving really fast, obviously, that we're in the conversation. Like I said, you've got a school with 53,000 students. It's an AAU school. It's a top 45 public school in the entire country. You're in the number 11 media market in the country, and now we've got really good facilities already, but now you're building a brand new stadium that you're spending $350 million on campus. You're building a football complex that's second to none. We've got a brand new indoor facility sitting out here. Like you're making yourself a really, really good case to continue to grow into an upper echelon college football program. Well, my job is to win enough football games that people say, you know what, we want those guys in it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not smart enough or have enough time in the day to worry about both. So I'm just going to worry about us putting together a program where we continue to win. We continue to win at a huge level, and then make somebody say, you know what, we want these guys to be a part of it. And that's what I got hired 2.5 years ago to do. And I come in every day and work like crazy to make sure that whenever that time comes, we're in the conversation of major college football.
Alex, I've never met you. Hope I do one day. I love your attitude. Appreciate it, Coach, very much. Good luck with what you're building there, and good luck this upcoming season, too.
Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all having me on. Go Bulls.
Alex Golesh, head coach at USF. The Bulls in Tampa. My oldest brother, Robert, went there for a little while. He spent a lot of time there. He never graduated from USF, but he did love his time there.
I would tell you it's probably a pretty easy school. I have a lot of friends that went there, obviously, but to spend a lot of time in Tampa, Tampa's a cool place to go to college. I was there right after college, hang out with a bunch of USF students. So yeah,
Did you go to Gasparilla?
Oh, I went to Gasparilla a couple times, yeah. I don't have a lot of vivid memories of it.
No, yeah. A lot of foggy memories, yeah.
It's all a bit of a blur. But
over the weekend, the story of this is my wheelhouse of growing up. George Foreman passed away at the age of 76. I was fortunate that when I was younger, you had Muhammad Ali. Jimmy Ellis was good. Joe Frazier. Obviously, then George Foreman and Ken Norton. Just a lot of great heavyweight fighters. He passed away. I had a chance to interview George Foreman a handful of times when I was in East Texas. He was, of course, from Marshall, and a gentle giant, although early on in his career, he would hurt you and make you like it. Kevin Iole, a boxing historian, joins us now. And I read an obituary that you wrote about George Foreman. Horrible loss because he was such a great man. And Kevin, how much did that hit you when you heard the news?
Yeah, I found out Friday evening, and I had just gotten done working, and I got a phone call that said George had passed away. And that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do as a professional, to write that. I think I've had to write 3 obituaries in my day. And you mentioned all 3 of the fighters, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, and now George Foreman. And, I was close with Joe and Muhammad, but much closer to George because I actually covered his fights. I didn't start covering boxing full-time until 1981 when Joe and Muhammad were getting out of the game. But George came back, and so I covered a lot of George's career. And the kind of man that he was, especially in that second run that he had, boy, I'll tell you what, it hits hard because, they call him Big George, and he was a big man with big power, but he also had a huge, big heart. And that's how I will choose to remember George.
When I was just going through before the interview, getting down some things I wanted to ask you, I knew this, but when you hear a fact again, when you read a fact again, it's kind of amazing. I mean, he only had 5 losses in his whole career, and the only time anybody ever knocked him out was his very last fight when he was 48 years old, which, considering some of the people he fought, is kind of ridiculously amazing.
Well, he didn't even get knocked out in that fight. He lost a decision in that fight that a lot of people thought he won. So, Ali was the fight that knocked him out, right? So that was the one that, the rope-a-dope tactic. And, George, hey, look, George could have made a big fuss that night because most people thought he beat Shannon Briggs on that fight. He ends up losing. And it showed his genius because he was such a genial guy, did not get upset at all. And then what does he do? If you remember the interview, and it's on YouTube so and people can find it, he turns around and he turns it into an ad for the Foreman Grill, which nobody at that time had ever heard of. And he turns it into the Foreman Grill ad. It was just genius on his part.
So I lived in Tyler for a long time, for 30 years. And he, of course, was in Marshall. And I got to tell you, Kevin, I remember one time when the news came back that he was going to come back. This was after he had lost. I think Jimmy Young was a tough loss for him. Obviously, everyone knows about Kinshasa Zaire and all that with Ali. But I was stunned, and I remember sitting down and doing an interview with him, and I couldn't believe it. And I didn't know if I believed in him, but he damn sure believed in himself, didn't he?
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, he realized that, I'm never going to be the same guy that I was before, young, lithe, able to move as well as punch. But the punching power that George brought to the ring was just, there might have been nobody in heavyweight history that punched like him. I can only think of 2 fighters that, that you might say were at his level in terms of power. And that would have been Joe Louis, but Joe Louis was a lot smaller. Joe Louis fought in his prime between 195 and 205. And then Ernie Shavers. And Ernie Shavers, was a massive, massive puncher. But Shavers wasn't the overall kind of fighter that George was. So when you were like George, and in his second go-round, where he was coming in, 260, 270, big, and could hit like a Sherman tank. I mean, boy, oh boy, that was a lot to deal with.
Kevin, I don't know, in all my years, and of course I mentioned all the great fighters and eventually the passing of the torch, was there ever a more brutal? Now, Hagler and Hearns was brutal, but what about Foreman and Ron Lyle? Was that one of the most, that was like 2 butcher shop guys just beating the hell out of each other.
Yeah, I put the link to that in my obituary on kevinioli.com, and I thought that is one of the underrated great fights in boxing history. I mean, especially if you get after about the second round, into this late second round. I mean, but I put the entire fight in there. It is rock'em sock'em robots come to real life, and it puts Hagler Hearns to shame. I mean, 2 giant guys just wailing on each other, and both of them were in big trouble. I mean, the pace that they kept for big guys was incredible. And I'm with you. I think that is one of the underrated fights of all time, and to me, might be the greatest KO of all time. What a fight.
What is George, if anything, when you talk to him, and the fact he came back to win and beat Michael Moorer was amazing. Did he regret anything? Anything in particular that he regretted?
No, what he said was he would have regretted not coming back and not being able to do what he did. Because at first, he says, when I found God, I could never make a fist again. And then he realized, I have a bully pulpit here. I can speak to the entire world, and I can preach essentially to boxing fans, and I can reach a lot more people with the message that I'm trying to deliver than I could if I was just a preacher and a former boxer somewhere. And so he basically used his visibility first as a boxer, later as an entrepreneur and just celebrity in general, to send the message out there of that he believed in people, that he believed in goodness. And I thought that Jim Lampley had a really good anecdote. He said that he was talking to Foreman and he asked George, do you and Muhammad Ali ever converse on the phone? And George said yes. And when Lampley heard that, he said, I'm surprised because he was a Muslim and you were a Christian. How did you reconcile that? And George said, well, Muhammad and I both agreed, good is good, bad is bad, and if you had any kind of moral compass, you could tell the difference.
Very, very interesting, yeah.
He wins the title at 45 years old.
Yes.
And then not only wins it, but retained it for a while, which I know was maybe a lot to indicate where boxing was at the time and where it's probably gone since then, but that's still one of those athletic feats that I can't wrap this. Nolan Ryan throwing no hitters at 45 years old. Tom Brady, he's kind of up there in that echelon because at any point at 45, 46, 47, there's got to be somebody that could come around and knock him down. And it took 4 or 5 fights for that to happen.
When you think about being in your mid-40s and competing at the highest level of whatever sport it is, other than something like golf, which is a game of a lifetime, right? But, when you're talking of a sport which is designed for young men and young people, and you're competing at that high level, I mean, it is just mind-blowing. And there's only a handful of them that have done it in the history of any sport, right? You don't go out there, you don't see, 40, 45-year-olds dominating in baseball or basketball or football or boxing, and it's just a rare few. There's a handful of them and throughout history that can do that. Bernard Hopkins came after George, and he did that, and he actually won a world title, is older than George, but rarely do you ever see that, and I just think it speaks to the kind of athlete that George really was.
I got to tell you, when he won the Olympics in 1968 and he ran around the ring with the flag, and then, of course, he annihilated Frazier, who was my guy, Kevin, by the way. I don't know if I still have ever gotten over that, but because I was in Japan. I was like in 8th grade, and the teacher came in, got a note, who wanted Joe Frazier? And I wrote, about, there's 25 kids in the class, and she goes, who wanted Foreman? And she goes, Foreman won. I still, to this day, can remember the feeling in my stomach. It was devastated. But he turned out to be a teddy bear. But in the ring, obviously, especially early on with what he went through in Houston and all that, how he grew up in the projects and all, he turned out to be such a fun, loving man. Was that always who he was, or was that after he kind of changed his life?
It was after he changed his life. Certainly he was not that way beforehand, and he was a troubled kid. When he turned to boxing, it straightened him out to a large degree, but he was still kind of a surly guy, mistrustful of a lot of people. And then he lost that fight to Jimmy Young, and it changed him for the good, because whatever you believe, you can look at what George was and what he became. And he became a person that helped other people, that cared about other people, that was open about sharing love and friendship and all that. And that's why, there are a lot of people who were sad on Friday when they heard the news he died, who never saw him box, didn't even know he boxed, but knew him from the grill or knew him from seeing him on television shows. He was on the Masked Singer, in 2022. And I think that, there's a whole generation of fans that love George that didn't even realize that he boxed. And I think that is a tribute to the man that he became.
Yeah, when somebody heard that name, they thought about the grill, probably. Anybody who's like, 40 and younger, or I don't know, in that particular range?
Yeah, because you're looking. Hey, look, in 1994 is when he won the belt. He was retired 1997. So that is over 30 years ago, right? So you're talking that you had to be of our age, right, to remember
Absolutely.
George in the ring. And thankfully, for people who love sports and love boxing, you can see a lot of George's fights on the internet. There's a ton of them out there, and you can see his loss to Ali, and you can see you mentioned the Joe Frazier fight. What I always remember about that was that uppercut that he threw that literally lifted Frazier off the ground.
I know, Kevin. He hopped. It's almost as if he hopped.
Yes.
And it happened so fast. Did Ali and Frazier, they hated each other. And Ali really said things about Joe Frazier that were just brutal along the way to rally his troops, but also that's just the way he was at the time. Did Ali and Foreman have that kind of relationship, or was it much more friendly?
Well, no, much as I mentioned, they used to talk to each other after they were retired. And Ali did not hate Frazier. Frazier hated Ali. So Ali did what he did to try to sell the shows. And, I think he went over the line in calling Frazier an Uncle Tom and the things that he did. I love Ali, but that crossed the line. And I understand why Frazier felt the way he did, referring to him as a gorilla. That was very difficult. But Muhammad and George had a different relationship, and they loved each other and they respected each other. And, you read my obituary, and I talk about the scene. I was the reporter that was I was referencing. I was interviewing him for Ali's obit, and I did not want to say, hey, I know Ali's going to pass soon. And I mentioned it, and George just had that way about him of calming you and everything. And he had a great relationship with Muhammad, and Muhammad's passing really hurt him badly.
The younger generation just knows the grill. They just know the grill. They do. But, I think the other thing that George Foreman kind of goes in the athlete, overall athlete Hall of Fame is, it was at that time, Michael Jordan had done that. And then, a couple other people were getting there, but nobody else had put their name on a brand like that, really, that was just them. Michael Jordan was still sharing with Nike in one way or another. So he kind of opened up the door now to what we see all athletes doing with their own brands and stuff that I think is kind of unprecedented.
Yeah, think about what he did, because, he agreed to allow his name to be put on this grill. Then he made a tremendous amount of money off it. And then he turns around and he sells it for, I think it was $135 million. So he sold the rights to the grill to somebody else, but his name remained on it. And, he showed himself to be a genius in business. So he wasn't just a champion in the ring. He was a champion outside of the ring, both as a preacher and a man who did good in the world, and also as a business person. And I think a lot of the people who came from backgrounds like he did, who were poor and who struggle and who didn't have, the education, they could look at George and say, if he could make it, I can make it too. And I think that's a big part of his legacy.
I'll never forget sitting down at, it's called the Oil Palace. It's just outside of Tyler. They used to have some old fights there. But Jack Dempsey fought there one time.
Oh, wow. That is an old place.
Yeah, it's a old brick building, but I'll never forget sitting down when he was making his comeback. Of course, he beat Cooney. Holmes, of course, had the great fight with Cooney. But Kevin, I could talk forever. I know you can't, and we have to move too, but I miss that time. And I know that sounds like an old man, which I am, but I just miss that when they fought, these were dudes that could fight, and there was always a great fight around the corner.
Well, the one thing that I think they did in the 70s and 80s that we're not doing as much now, but hopefully getting back to, is having the best fight the best, and then also having evenly matched fights up and down the card. That is really what boxing needs. And you saw in George's era throughout the 80s, in the part of his comeback in the 90s, he was fighting the best guys that were out there. That is what you have to do. And I think that the fact that George, as well as a lot of other people, showed that example, I think is helping boxing now, because we're looking back on that era fondly, saying, bring that back and boxing will come back.
By the way, you can go to KevinIole.com for anything he does. I watch some YouTube stuff with what you do with podcast on the Foreman. But, man, for you, Ali, Frazier, Foreman, the trifecta almost, a perfect triangle of greatness. And you were writing obituaries. That says a hell of a lot about what you are as an historian and boxing fan.
Well, I appreciate you, brother. That means a lot. It was tough to do, but, I wanted to honor George in the best way that I could.
You did.
And it meant a lot to me to be able to do it.
You absolutely did. Is it okay if I copy the link that shows the fight, too, along with your obituary, put it on our chat room?
Of course.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate your time.
Be well. Thanks, guys. See you soon.
I sent a text to Dan Wetzel, who's now at ESPN, was at Yahoo forever, and I said, listen, there's a couple of people I could probably contact, but can you tell me who you would recommend as a boxing analyst to discuss George Foreman, who's more than just the boxer, but also the entrepreneur? And he gave me Kevin Ioli's number. Glad he did. Glad we had him on. Thank you for his time. When we come back, the Sweet 16 is set. What does Seth Greenberg of ESPN have to say about it? That's next. This is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr Motors has been serving Central Texas for 26 years, and they are celebrating right now with some anniversary sale savings. You can get a 2024 GMC Sierra 1500 SLE. Qualified buyers can save $11,750 with an eligible trade-in on the GMC Sierra 1500 SLE. Qualified non-GM owners can also find savings on the Buick lineup of vehicles like the 2025 Buick Encore GX, which for qualified non-GM owners can find you grabbing $4,500 in savings right now. They also have the Car and Driver's Editor's Choice, the all-new Buick Envista in stock right now. Richard Carr starting under $24,795. Of course, you can contact them over the phone, on their website, or in person to get more info on all of their various deals. But right now, they've got lots in anniversary savings. They are locally owned. They are locally run. And right now, this particular anniversary, they're celebrating 26 years of doing business in the Waco area. So do business in the area where a dealership is all about giving back to the local community, to the local university. Deal with people you can count on. Take advantage of some great deals going on right now at the anniversary sales savings event at Richard Carr Buick GMC Cadillac.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports. Check out the 365 Sports family of channels on YouTube.
Working on Seth Greenberg from ESPN. The Sweet 16 is set. And there are some collision course games coming up. By the way, before we get on to Seth Greenberg in just a second, hold on, Paul. Let me text him again just to make sure he has or knows your number. I think before he always calls you back.
Yeah.
I mentioned George Foreman. If you know a lot of people in the media, not just in the Dallas and Fort Worth area, but many, many others around the state of Texas who have been impacted by Bill Mercer. He passed away over the weekend at the age of 99. I saw first the post from Brad Sham. Some of the guys that are on the ticket went to school at the University of North Texas. He was the GOAT when it comes to young broadcasters, journalism students that went on to be a part of broadcasting. Everywhere you look, you see names that knew him. Don Harris down in San Antonio, many that were a part of the University of North Texas. He was 99. He broadcast a Cowboys Super Bowl game. He was a part of the Rangers their first year in 72. He also did the wrestling, pro wrestling. He was
the wrestling.
The
wrestling.
Yeah, he was very much the guy when it comes to professional wrestling and broadcast those games on local TV. He was the GOAT, and he passed away at 99.
Smokey, I don't think that I've ever been in a press box in Dallas without him in it. Like, he's always there. Always.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, he's unbelievable. And how many different careers he touched, of course, along the way as well.
Yeah, it wasn't just the wrestling. It was the Von Erichs. It was world-class championship wrestling in Dallas. It was that whole rage in the 80s with the Von Erich boys and the Fabulous Freebirds and all of that. He also did some stuff with the JFK assassination, being there in Dallas. You talk about a guy who had his fingerprints on a lot of things. But, yeah, you're talking about the Cowboys coverage. I wish I would have known he was at Cowboys games. I would have gone to more Cowboys games and knew if Bill Mercer was there, asking him about Michael P.S. Hayes and those dastardly Freebirds. But
I don't know where he sat during the games, but he came up for the pregame meal. All the time, because it's always second to none. But, yeah, he was always – I met him. I've talked to him 25, 30 times.
Great guy. He was on the radio voice during the JFK assassination and coverage as well in Dallas. We're now joined by Seth Greenberg, great friend of ours from ESPN, college basketball analyst. He joins us on 365 Sports. Seth, thank you very, very much. Is this as chalk as they say tournament you've ever seen when it comes to who's in the Sweet 16?
Yeah, we've had this before. It's not like this is the first time this has ever transpired. There's a reason for it. Obviously, with NIL and the transfer portal and everything that surrounds it, you're having more and more. Basically, the mid-majors are turning into the G League or junior college, and the high majors are pilfering those guys. And on the other hand, they're going to go down to Division II and try to find, or lower Division I and try to recruit them. And it's kind of like the ecosystem of what college athletics is all about right now.
Do you think that this is oh my gosh, the Cinderellas are gone, or it's, like you said, we've had this before. Basketball, even with NIL and the transfer portal and in the conference, bloating and all these gigantic leagues, it's still just kind of about the hot hand, isn't it? And the guys who are under the radar that slip into those mid majors before the big guys find them.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's happening. But look, we still Cinderellas. Last year we had NC State, right? They were Cinderella. It came from Power 5, but they swept through the ACC tournament, made it to the Final Four. This year we had McNeese State. So sometimes guys transfer down, and then one school gets 3 or 4 high majors that have transferred down, and you see what happens. McNeese had to, obviously had a great upset win over Clemson. So, you have a situation last night where, Colorado State almost beat Maryland. So you're having these great games. Are we going to have fewer upsets? Yeah, there's no doubt about it. We're going to have fewer upsets because, the balance of power is going to trickle up more than trickle down. And trickle up is basically these kids that have really, really good freshman or sophomore years, they're going to end up in, like I say, I call it the G League, because right now they're signing 1-year G League contracts, and you know what? NBA teams are bringing them up and signing them to full contracts, and that's just the state of our game right now.
Seth, are there specific, obviously Cooper Flagg with what he's doing at Duke, among some others, Broome at Auburn, there's others, a lot of great players that are left in the tournament. Which one is capable? Is there a Carmelo Anthony, not because he was a one and done, but a guy like that can carry a team to the championship the rest of the way? Are there multiple type players?
I mean, look, there are other players that can break through. I mean, and other programs and teams that can break through. Like Walter Clayton at Florida. I mean, can he carry a team? The two big 7-footers at Michigan, Golden and Wolf, can they break through and beat Auburn, knock them out, and maybe get a piece of Michigan State? Michigan State, Jace Richardson. Even though he didn't have a good game yesterday, could he? Or Derek Queen at Maryland, could he? JT Toppin, can he create Texas Tech and do those type of things? So there are players now. There aren't lottery picks. They're not lottery picks, but they're really good players, and they're really good teams, and they're older teams. The one team that's the interesting thing is the best game of next week is BYU Alabama. The pace of that game is going to be ridiculous.
Yeah. That should end up. That could be like 100-98, like almost an Alabama-Auburn game that was played a couple of different times this year. But, boy, BYU, Seth, they are red hot.
Yeah, they're red hot. They play really well. They share the ball. They have great spacing. They have shot makers all over the floor. They very good passing team. In a second-day preparation, they're hard to prepare for. Richard Saunders has been absolutely terrific. And those are the two big guys, Fusei and Traore, or Keita. Those two guys are literally, they're like bookends, but they're hard to match up with because they're so physical.
Seth, the Arkansas and John Calipari, Kentucky and Mark Pope, BYU. This is kind of weird where you've got 3 Sweet 16 teams that made these coaching changes, and it all has worked out nearly perfectly for all of them in year one.
Yeah, it has. And you just think about Musk created the whole trickle-down effect. And he's the only one on the outside looking in. But yeah, it's amazing. It took John a little while to figure his team out, had some injuries. They worked through that. BYU wasn't guarding very well early. They're guarding better, and they're explosive offensively for Kevin Young. And then you've got, Mark Pope, who dealt with some injuries. And they're playing good basketball, and they've improved defensively to an extent. Yeah, it's interesting. I guess Cal didn't forget how to coach, and Pope finally won the NCAA tournament game. And Kevin Young now, he's the only one that plays, space and pace. So it's, you get all these scenarios. Dusty May might have done a good job as any of them. They'll move into a new school.
I got to tell you, I didn't watch Michigan a lot, but there was one game I watched them earlier, maybe a month ago. They beat Nebraska like 46-45, and it was not fun to watch. I never really watched them enough to realize how damn good those two bigs are inside. They're athletic, they can move, they're mobile, and they just ate up A&M eventually and wore them down. And of course, the guard is great, Donaldson, too.
Yeah, Donaldson, another conspiracy, former Auburn guard playing against Auburn. So, there's conspiracies all over. It was the Rick Pitino, obviously John Calipari conspiracy. There's all conspiracies throughout the bracket. But, yeah, Michigan's very good. Donaldson's good. Ronnie Gale played really, really well. They just have a lot of – their pieces fit really well.
Seth, was this the best job? He's had great years before. That's how he grew up through UMass and what he did, Memphis, and then, of course, his career. Was this Calipari's kind of like, hey, I'm not gone? Is this one of his best coaching jobs ever?
Yeah, he's done a great job because when you go 0-5 in the SEC and then turn it around and, end up where they are in the Sweet 16, that's a maturity. That's a leader. That's a guy that figured his team out. That's a guy that had patience when they were struggling and still got his guys to continue to work and compete and play hard. And he just poured into his team, and then his team poured into each other. They learned to trust each other. He made some changes in terms of, because of injuries, personnel, And what it ended up in is something really, really special.
How would you describe Kelvin Sampson, and how often have you talked to him?
I talked to Kelvin some. Look, what he is he's unrelenting, and his team is unrelenting. And there's play as hard as any team in the country. You know, Jay Billis likes to say to lead the country playing hard. I think a lot of teams play hard. They're hard and extremely, extremely physical. So, it's Kelvin's just done an incredible, incredible job. I mean, it really is. The consistency of their program the last 4 years, the consistency of how they play the last 4 years, the development of their backcourt this year and their shot making. Juwan Robertson, seeing how much he's improved, it's been spectacular.
Seth, can we play a little rapid fire game on some of these coaching changes?
Yeah, and then I got to run because I got last year. Go ahead, real quick.
Okay, Sean Miller to Texas.
Home run.
Ben McCollum to Iowa.
Great, perfect fit.
Nico Medved back home.
Another perfect fit and a savant offensively.
Will Wade, NC State.
Risk reward.
Darian DeVries to Indiana.
Another risk reward, but a terrific basketball coach. The risk is that if the people of Indiana, the first time he loses a game, don't lose their mind and swallow him up, because the guy's a terrific basketball coach.
Seth, our last question. Thank you, buddy. Grant McCaslin and Tech, they have been really good. One in Houston. He was on Scott Drew's staff. Yeah, your thought? Do they remind you really a mirror image in a way of Houston?
Yeah, very with their toughness and their physicality. They don't monster the post or blitz ball screens. They just keep everything in front. They're a no-mistake team. You've got to beat them, and the personnel is good. The freshman Anderson kid's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Williams is just a matchup kind of problem. McMillan plays. They got a shot maker, and then Toppin. They can go small or go big, but Toppin's a matchup problem. If you play a legitimate big, they move them all over the court. I spent a couple days in Lubbock when the TBT was there. I spent actually a week there and spent time with Coach, and I was just blown away with just what a great guy and what a terrific coach. And coaches his guys hard, but they buy into him. So very, very impressive.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time, Seth.
Guys, appreciate it.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Seth Greenberg, ESPN, with us in between different assignments. We appreciate his time on 365 Sports. So, Sean Miller, home run. Said risk reward with Will Wade and DeVries. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think with Will Wade, it's risk because he's going to be bold. He's going to take big swings, and so sometimes when you take big swings, you get big misses too, right?
Minnesota, he liked it. Offensive savant with Nedved and Medved, excuse me, and then there was one other we missed. McCollum. He liked that one too. He liked that one too. All right, thanks to Seth.
Perfect fit, right?
Yep, that's what he said. Thanks to again, Seth Greenberg, for being a part of our show today. We appreciate that.
Have y'all enjoyed the tournament more or less or the same?
A little bit less because of the lack of buzzer beaters and upsets early. But it's still really good basketball. I haven't watched. There's only been a couple real slog blowout games, and look, Duke and Baylor wound up being a blowout. It started out really good, but Norchad O'Meara gets 3 fouls, and then the last line of defense in the first half was out. The only guy who could match with Duke and their size was gone. But for the most part, I've seen nothing but pretty good games. I skipped Oregon and Liberty. I didn't watch that one, but most of them were really good.
Let me tell you something. Norchad O'Meara could have had no fouls, and that was headed to a blowout.
I don't think it would have been as bad at halftime as he not been in foul trouble.
Well, the last 5 minutes,
because it was just there's no one in there that can even slow them down now, and he was doing a very good job of doing that and keeping them in the game, but. At no point did I ever think Baylor was going to pull this upset because of the depth. They didn't have it.
I just asked the question because I've seen, all sorts of takes on just the tournament. So you go sit in social media anywhere for a while, and there's going to be takes regarding, enjoyment level or lack of this or more of that, less of this. But yeah, I've enjoyed it. I'm going to definitely miss having the one after the other games on that have meaning behind them. That's the best part about those first couple of weekends is just the nonstop. This game's over, now this game's underway, and you can just go
I thought it was erratic. I thought it was kind of a strange the way that they It seemed like there was always more than one game. It seemed like there used to be a great flow to the games. I didn't get that this weekend.
I was saying I liked that there was always an option. Like there was always some game on, but you're saying you don't like that there was.
No, maybe it was because I didn't see enough games that had that maybe that, oh, my God, so-and-so's losing. The one thing I do remember about the weekend is that BYU and Houston had a game. They had their games won. And, my God, did they have to hold on down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, BYU had the ejection there late and just the craziness of that. But they held on and survived, and Houston obviously as well. I think if you're the SEC, you're obviously over the moon. I mean, this is an all-timer of a field for you in the Sweet 16 and for anybody for that matter. But I do think if you're Brett Yormark, you're more than happy with having 4 teams in there in Houston, Texas Tech, BYU, and Arizona. And how about that 3 of those 4 are all schools who have joined in the last 2 years? I mean, what about without them? What about if you didn't have Arizona? What if you didn't have BYU and Houston? So their additions there. And meanwhile, I mean, the Big Ten – they just had their, traditional schools all made it, right? SEC, their traditional schools have all made it. So you had more like early on as far as your total maybe, but for the Big 12, it's those new booties that are like carrying you into the Sweet 16 for the most part.
Sure.
I think that's definitely a good thing that came from the moves that you made. Maybe you don't see the dividends paid off in football immediately or this or that, but in basketball, it certainly helped them wave their banner a little bit more.
Well, BYU's on a heater. Garrett, leave that up for a second. Of those 16 teams, the ones who are in a new conference in the last year or two, you mentioned Arizona, BYU.
That's it. Houston.
Maryland, because they've been in the Big Ten for quite some time.
In Houston, over a decade,
in Houston, yeah, you're right. Michigan State could be on a collision course. They've never met in the tournament. Tennessee and Kentucky have never met in the tournament. They've played like 185 times or so. Chris Beard's back in the tournament at Ole Miss. Some really, really good. And I think Purdue's kind of overlooked a little bit.
Yeah.
Not that they weren't supposed to be good.
Zach Edey's gone, so they don't have they don't have the roster this year that they did a year ago. But they're still damn good. You know, Ole Miss throttled Iowa State.
Yeah.
And Iowa State made a little bit of a surge when Ole Miss realized hey, let's not pull some hammies here.
That was a little bit surprising to me. I just thought maybe Iowa State could play with him a little, but they didn't really.
I think they've been too banged up down the stretch, and that even the guys that are playing are not playing at 100%. I mean, who's playing at 100%, but they may be a little bit further down the line from that. But yeah, I've been nothing but impressed by pretty much every team in the There's nobody in the Sweet 16. Sometimes you get a team that you can tell isn't very good, but they got the best matchups and they fell kind of ass backwards into it. That's not the case with any of these teams at all. They've all played tough games.
Here's the thing, too, is you're going to have some teams that are going to naturally probably eliminate each other. I mean, it's going to have to be that way to get down to the end of it. But if you can get through these next games, I mean, you're looking at a situation where your 4 teams, if you're Brett Yormark, I mean, you can get 3 onto the next weekend. Based on the way it's set up right now. You can't get more than that, but you can get 3 onto the next weekend because Texas Tech is out by itself. In the West region, you got Houston's out in the Midwest region, and you got Arizona and BYU who would have to play each other if they win their first games out in the Eastern region. You got nobody there in the South, but that's a good spread so that you're not all in two sides, and then you can only maybe get 1 or 2. You can get 3 onto the next weekend if at all possible, but it's obviously easier said than done.
And one that normally carries the flag, KU, they've been gone for a while, right?
Yeah.
The team that won a national title right before them, Baylor out in 2 rounds again. Iowa State, I think, ended up as a disappointing year for them. Based on who they were, injuries obviously had something to do with that.
I'll tell you this, old boy from Clemson, the head coach of Clemson, had some words to say about the Big 12 and the best basketball league last year. And look, everything's cyclical, man. The SEC can puff their chest out now, but again, what happens next year when they lose some guys to the NBA? Maybe that you don't make the best decisions in the portal. Everything is cyclical. Every single thing is. And so this year they got 14. What if next year they only get 9? Yeah. Are they?
Only 9. Only 9.
Well, I mean, with 16.
Yeah. I know, but still only 9. I saw this note. This was a post on a message board. A couple of weeks ago, I had grave concerns for the well-being and safety of Cinderella. Unfortunately, these concerns were well-founded and have now come true. Even Cinderella's parents are already leaving. A fear Cinderella has become extinct. She has permanently been eliminated.
No.
Who murdered Cinderella?
No.
Oh, my Lord.
I don't think that that's true. I mean, again, these things change. And what does it take? It takes a Davidson having Steph Curry. It takes those kind of things to happen. And they will still continue to happen. It's probably in the case where it won't. My concern is when you go to 76, you always, like, when you expand something, you give teams more chances to lose. And it's those teams that have to play that extra game that have had to probably put more into their conference tournament. Like John Calipari can say last week, I don't care about the conference tournament. Well, if you are, a team from a one-bid league or what could be essentially 1.5 if they go to 76 because maybe you'll get 2 in some years, like you've had to go balls out in your conference tournament as where teams like Arkansas or Kentucky or whoever could be like, oh, we lost, bummer. All right, well, see you in Toledo next week. It doesn't matter for them.
Our good friend John Gallagher, they were beaten. Manhattan lost to Incarnate Word, so we'll try to get him on to help analyze the Sweet 16. By the way, I got to ask this question. Emery, did your YouTube page on your laptop freeze up? Did it die? It's like clockwork at like 5:10 or 5:15. Every day that we're in the studio, my YouTube, while I'm watching the show and also the chat, it just freezes up. It's
that's
weird.
when we start our separate secret YouTube chat that you're not a part of. That's all that is.
Okay.
Super bonus YouTube chat.
Now you told him about it, Craig, and we have to share the money with him.
Jeez.
My
bad, Paul.
There goes my ski chalet in the Alps.
All right, you guys.
I'm gonna have to move to Vail like a poor person.
Or
now.
yeah. My God, you're going to have to sell your place in Cabo.
Well, I mean, look, I'm gonna have to just go to Destin.
Okay.
That's not what I wanted.
All right. When we come back, a couple of the nuggets to get to. Paul's top 5 just around the corner. We haven't taken many breaks because, my goodness, hope you've enjoyed the guests we've had and kind of an array of different things, too. It's also, I know the Dodgers played in, Japan? Was it Japan a couple of weeks ago for the openers?
Last week.
Baseball Major League Week, one of the great weeks in sports coming up at the end of the week. So that's about to hit around the corner, even though we don't get into baseball too much.
I'm mad at the country of Japan right now because they hurt Mookie Betts.
Yeah, he's got a stomach ailment, right?
Yeah, I don't know what he did, but, don't think I'm not watching you now. No.
It's the
cleanest place in the world.
Even to this day, when I see videos, and you got to always wonder about what videos are, but even to this day, that is probably as pristine a country when it comes to things like that, in cleanliness and stuff like that. I don't know if he just had something bad to eat or he has a bug or a virus that he can't get rid of. When we come back, more to get to when it comes to the tournament, some college football notes. I think that, Garrett, I sent you a note about Kansas. Was it Kansas or was it SMU? Yeah, SMU's field. Let's try to show you that. They're changing up their field, the grass, and that and more. This is 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Have a great day there. And Ted Teague, the general manager and CEO. Right now, a 2024 Grand Cherokee Limited MSRP was $64,910, now reduced to under $48,000 plus tax, title, and license. Also, $16,000. You save $16,900 with that discount. A Jeep Wrangler Sahara, more than $11,000 off MSRP. They have unbeatable lineup available. Jeep Wagoneers, Grand Wagoneers, Wranglers, and Grand Cherokees. If you need a truck, it's truck month. 2025 Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab, now $11,780 off the 2024 Ram 2500, only $43,732 plus tax, title, and license. Ram Truck Month. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Automatic
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
365 Sports as we roll towards Paul's top 5. KU had a couple of videos out about their brand new facilities up in Lawrence they've been working on. Had to play all of last year outside of their stadium. Here's SMU, and this is not like breaking news, but peeling up their turf and laying down grass. I love grass fields. That doesn't mean that's the best. Sometimes it could be a financial decision. Sometimes you hope the health part of it as well. But swapping out artificial turf for grass at Gerald J. Ford Stadium in Dallas.
If you ask players what they like, they all prefer grass over turf, field turf, any kind of artificial surface. So it's all I'm sure the players there are thrilled. And if to me, if you don't have a covered stadium, you should have grass. And even if you do now, they do. I prefer grass. Kyle Field has grass.
But are we not going to act like everybody went turf not that long ago? When did it all of a sudden become status quo for everybody to go back to natural grass again?
Because I think a lot of people started complaining hey, this is better than the old stuff, but still no one likes it.
Those people were the people who sell natural grass who planted that story.
I guess so. Or the players that said hey,
No, I just find it weird that so many people got turf installed and these new places and these new facilities, and then years later it's we got to turn around and go plant natural grass again. That's some easy process to do versus rolling out the turf and sewing that together. Yeah. So I've seen this become more of the norm because I guess of just the health education that's come with the last few years and knee injuries and how they hold up better on grass versus turf and just general information like that. So that's the trendy thing to do is to go natural grass. I noticed, I think Texas and some of their projects, like their baseball field, they're trying to turn back to natural grass eventually. And I know that there's been a couple of other schools that I've seen stuff like that about. So, yeah, it's just part of staying contemporary and keeping all your stuff as nice as possible. And certainly SMU's got more money to do that now than they had before, and more to hang on to more than anything than before to keep up their facilities.
I am trying to think of my timeline of stadium turf. From the time when I started broadcasting in 1981, there was the hard as rock AstroTurf, but not everybody could do that. There were a few high school stadiums that did that. Texas Stadium at the time. Then there was a time when people kind of went back to grass again, and not everybody. Again, it's a monetary thing too. Then, what was it around 2000 when Waco ISD had a really nice state-of-the-art football stadium? It's still a beautiful place, and they installed the field turf that had the billion pieces of tires, rubber, that were spread across it. I'll never forget, I did a game early in the year they opened up Waco ISD Stadium, and they had like a lawnmower, but without the cutter, going up and down like a baseball infield, dragging the turf. And you could see the millions of pieces of tires that were cut up, popping up. I did a show that afternoon, went down in the field, and it was crazy. You saw uniforms. People wore white. You see a bunch of, like it looks like there's a lint on it. But now you're going back to, you still have that. That's still a really good turf. But a lot of teams, depending on money and what they want to do, going back to the natural grass, which I think is great. Paul, did you ever play on a turf field, like AstroTurf?
No, I lived in Florida. I mean,
yeah,
we have rain. It was in the 90s too. So we have rain all the time. So nobody ever thought there's no drought to worry about the grass not living.
Yeah, it ought to be luscious. And that's why the golf courses are so beautiful.
I did play on a field in a city called Okeechobee, Florida, that was mostly dirt because they were the Brahma Bulls, and they had like an actual animal husbandry department, and they just let the bulls and the cows graze and shit on the field. They during the national anthem, we're all looking over the end zone, and they've got their Brahma Bull out, and it's in the end zone, in the front corner of the end zone. And they didn't do anything about it. Well, it was the biggest psychological warfare I've ever seen in a game. They just left it there.
The good news for you, though, you were not a skill position player, so you never spent time in the end zone.
Well, I mean, the thing is,
you helped open a hole.
And they raised the guy in the air right at the celebration.
It was right on the stripe. So, I was a lineman. I could have very easily, look, in that game, I stepped in a few holes and fell down. Now, we got our asses handed to us, so we weren't close to the end zone in that game. But, look, given how much I fell down in that game, there was a good chance I was getting up covered in dung.
Well, if you fell in too big of a hole, we couldn't find you.
Yeah, it was
the old shock. Remember that lime?
There were dips. I ran a counter trap, and I was pulled around, and I stepped in a hole and the film was hilarious. It was just 20 guys in the pile, and our running back, we were the last two off, and he's throwing the ball down at me. I'm like, what do you want me to do, man? How do I know there's a hole here?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord. But they used to line the field with the lime. It was back in the day.
And they didn't even put kitty litter on the thing in the end zone. They could have done that. That would have been better.
Well, especially if it rained, it could soak up the water.
Yeah.
All right. Of the Sweet 16 games, home court advantage or home location advantage, who has the best one? BYU, Alabama will play in Newark, New Jersey.
Yeah, they're not close to either one.
Maryland and Florida in San Francisco.
Not close to either one.
Arizona, Duke in Newark, New Jersey.
Duke will have a lot of people there, yeah.
Yeah, Duke, man, when they get home, they get Raleigh and then New Jersey. Arkansas, Texas Tech in San Francisco, California.
No home court advantage.
Ole Miss, Michigan State in Atlanta. Michigan State will travel, but Ole Miss, that's a little more SEC. Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indianapolis. That's almost a neutral site right there. Michigan and Auburn in Atlanta.
Yeah, Auburn's going to do well there.
Purdue and Houston in Indianapolis.
Yeah, Purdue has the best one.
So Houston's a number one seed in playing, I think it's 70 miles from Lafayette.
Will you tell me the four teams that are playing in San Francisco?
Let's see. Maryland, Florida, Arkansas, and Texas Tech.
Yeah. I don't really know how the vibe is in Maryland about San Francisco, but I know, though, that there's a large percentage of the fans for all three of those other teams that will not want to set foot in San Francisco.
Why?
Because they don't like San Francisco, because they're from Texas, Arkansas, and Florida.
Oh, okay.
Places that all insult San Francisco on a daily basis, sometimes rightfully, but yeah, that's going to be like, oh, damn, we got to go there. Great.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Never thought about it that way. Well, they're going to be in a beautiful hotel. They're going to be pampered with great facilities, amenities, and a hell of a basketball game.
The players will. I don't know about the fans.
Yeah. All right. Anything else we have not touched on yet today? Chris Kleiman, K-State football coach, is one of our guests, by the way, for tomorrow's show. All right. When we come back, Paul Catalina and the top 5. Idealmri.com. I was there yet again. Golly, I've spent a lot of time there, and thank goodness they're a great business. I've had some of these issues in my back that create problems elsewhere. Lately, that shoulder that's been stinging for almost 3 months. So I went back a couple of weeks ago and got an MRI of my upper neck, spine, cervical area, and really did not show anything in particular other than just, the fact that there's some bumps and bruises and some degenerative areas that are part of also being 65 years old. But it was another great experience. Always has been. I have been in an MRI machine before where I absolutely, no matter if they would have drugged me, put me to sleep, knocked me out, I could not have gotten into that tunnel, into that tube. It just was not going to happen. I have never had that experience with the great techs and specialists at Ideal MRI. And also the experience I've had every time is that very quickly I will hear back from them. And even at times they've told me what's in the imaging or what they see, and the doctors that ordered it, orthopedic surgeons or otherwise, that get the images very quickly in the portal too. $497 or less every single time at idealmri.com.
You might ask yourself what functional mushrooms are good for. Whether it's lion's mane, cordyceps, turkey tail, shiitake, reishi, they all serve a purpose.
You have ones for neurological health, ones for sleeping and gut health, and all these different areas. They pack a powerful punch.
Functional mushrooms are, of the millions of mushrooms and fungi out there, the ones that we can actually ingest and benefit from as humans.
Like all adaptogens, they kind of adapt to what you need at the time that you need them.
We don't even really know that we're suffering. We just don't quite feel right. That's where these adaptogens come in and really start to close the gap and really start getting us closer to how we want to feel.
Functional mushrooms have definitely re-energized me and helped me face each day with a new vigor for life.
Learn ways that functional mushrooms can help you. Go to getumble.com.
You spent hours selecting your patio sofa. Choosing that grill would have taken weeks. Probably your car needed way more time. For sure, you would have spent months mulling over that pool of yours. Protecting your prized possessions needs no time, though. Just visit coversandall.com, create a custom size per your requirements, pick a fabric and personalize your cover, and leave the rest to us. Premium protection for all that you love.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Ticket Club. Forget the fees, just big savings. Click the link in the description to find out more.
Welcome to Paul Catalina's Top 5, presented by Ticket Club. Link in the bio or in the description. I don't know. Some of these things are new social media terms. I get confused. I'm going to be 45 in less than a month. I don't have to learn these things anymore. I can start saying, children, teach me the internet, or do it for me. That's the joy of middle age and apparently senior citizendom, is that you don't have to push buttons on things, no matter how simple it may be. Today, top 5 things bothering me after the first weekend. This is where I get to be a curmudgeon a little bit here. Number 5, big conferences kind of suck. Look, congratulations to the SEC on getting 14 teams in. Really, 12 or 13 deserved to be in. Texas didn't deserve to be in. They fired their coach literally during the tournament. Is that a team that should be in the tournament? One that was so unhappy with their coach, all it took was one more loss to do it? Nah. And 7 SEC teams in the Sweet 16 is great if you're an SEC fan or a fan of one of those teams. But is it great for what made this tournament great? Which is teams from all over, all these 350 plus teams that have this shot? Not really. I mean, the only double-digit seed we'll talk about in a second is, from one of those bloated conferences. It's just, at least in this year, and I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and start a panic, but at least this year, there's a little of the luster lost in the tournament because of all the big dogs and all the bloated conferences that now get more teams in. They weren't just a year ago in those conferences or 2 years ago. So we're adjusting to a new normal, and this is why adding even more teams at 76 won't make this thing better. Number 4, one of those teams was bought on chicken nugget money from Tyson Chicken. Calipari, the only double-digit seed in Arkansas in the tournament, actually underachieved to be a 10 seed. The amount of money that they're paying Coach Calipari and that roster means they should be a much higher seed than 10, but underachieved much of the year to get to this point. Now, congratulations to them for beating Kansas and St. John's, 2 really tough wins. As a matter of fact, probably no 10 seed in the tournament had a tougher go than Kansas and St. John's in back-to-back games, and they won both of those and moved on and beat St. John's kind of convincingly. So yeah, they deserve to be there, but also they're not really a 10 seed in the way that most 10 seeds are 10 seeds. Bought and paid for with chicken nugget money. And if I may say so, I'm not dogging Tyson Chicken Nuggets.
Is this a face that would dog Tyson chicken nuggets? No. And dino nuggets are fantastic. If you're a child and want a dino nugget, I support you. If you're an adult and want them in private, I also support that. But don't do it in public. Be an adult. Not knocking it. It's just the fact of it that, yes, a 10 seed is underachieving for them. Now they've matched to where the roster they're paying for, which is a Sweet 16 roster. Number 3, do we know what traveling is anymore? Much like a catch or targeting in the NFL, Derek Queen, in my opinion, traveled on that last shot. Gene Steratore, an official, he said he didn't travel. Other officials have commented and said he did. So what's a freaking travel? I don't know what it is. I thought 3 steps meant traveling. But apparently there's something about if you're totally controlling the ball or whatever, I don't know. I just want to know what traveling is. The NBA kind of ruined this for everybody, but I don't know. And I can't say, was that traveling or not? Because when I watched it, I thought, hey, that's traveling. Then right after, I was pulled into a debate online and on television of, was it really traveling? And no one really gave me a definitive answer, whether it was or it wasn't. It's just up to the eye of the beholder. Number 2, this is a meme I saw this weekend, was sent to me, and I thought I would bring it up because I feel, even though it's not my original idea, that I do need to talk about it as the resident Italian here. My name is Naval, so I'm going to have an opinion on this. We pitted all the Italians against each other. Patino versus Calipari, other Patino versus Izzo. And that means we only get 2 out of the 4 possible Italians in the tournament. I don't like this. I want the Italians spread out across for cultural reasons. Also, I would have loved to see Patino v. Patino at some point, but maybe we'll see that down the road. Even still, I'm with you, Silvio. It's anti-Italian discrimination. Number 1, so much chalk. One of the reasons the first weekend is exciting is because the non-chalk moments happen. And while we got close a couple times, it just didn't happen. Now, is this the first year that we've had chalk, 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 chalk? No. Now, the world will react as if it is, but it's not. It's just a bummer when it happens that not one big team got upset. Now, I picked Florida to win this whole thing. And yes, I feel dirty. Would I have been happy to just have given my $25 in the pool I'm in to my friend who's putting it on if I was wrong about Florida winning? Yes. And for them to get upset? Absolutely. Wasn't going to happen, obviously, although UConn gave them all they wanted. But I would like to see one, like big time 15-2, 14-3, like one of those, too much chalk. All the number 1 seeds are alive. Only 1 2 seed is not. And that's St. John's, who lost to Arkansas, who's really not a 10 seed in the way that most 10 seeds are 10 seeds. I'm going back to that because, again, chicken nugget money, baby. That's going to do it for us. Smokey, please dismiss the class.
All right, thank you, Paul. And my goodness, looking at the chat room at times, it does appear as if some need to be sent to the timeout corner. But seriously, we appreciate your support, your time. If you could, before you leave, if you haven't yet, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. If you haven't, also spread the word on the guests that we had today, the ones we'll have the rest of the week and the ones we have every single day. Emery Winter is already editing up 365 Sports tonight, 10:30 tonight on the local CW. Garrett Ross running the mothership. Andrew Valade is there, right there with him as well, putting up different clips and stuff that we have. I love what we're doing on social media with all of where we are. Thanks to Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. Thanks to you, our great sponsors, too. Every day, Paul's back at 1 o'clock, triple option tomorrow. We're back at 3. Have a great night. Good night. I'm David Smoak on 365 Sports.